Father in heaven, thank you so much for this lovely day once again. We thank you for the fellowship we have together. We ask and pray, Lord, as we enter another session of these meetings here, that you continue to bless us, enlighten us, Lord, and give us a hearing ear, that we may learn from you once again and become more and more like you. We pray all this in Christ's lovely name. Amen. It's all yours now.
There. Testing one. Isn't that good music? I enjoy it. That's okay. There we go. So this afternoon, we're not going to use the PowerPoint in this one. The evening one, we will use PowerPoint. But this afternoon, y'all are wanting to know a little bit about diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and then some folks were asking about the immune system. Diabetes. There's two types of diabetes, type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and they're totally plumb different. They're two separate diseases. But yet you can address both of them similarly. Let's start with type 2. The first 20 years of my career, I never saw a care plan that said reversal of diabetes. It was always diabetic management through pharmaceuticals. And then I went to a clinic that we had over a 98% reversal rate of type 2 diabetes. And the difference is masking and managing versus reversing root cause, addressing root cause. And there's three things that I found that can affect type 1 diabetes. And first, you look at how the insulin receptor works. Type 2 diabetes is insulin resistance. And so you've got a cell, and you've got trillions of cells, and around each cell you have multiple insulin receptors. And you've got a little door, to make it easy, you've got a little door that opens and allows the glucose in. The receptor allows it in. And so what can happen, well, what happens is if you need more glucose in the cell, the insulin opens the door. That's the little guy that opens the door of the insulin receptor. And then you've got glucose in the blood, and it allows glucose in the cell. And everybody's fine. Everything works well. What happens is when this door doesn't work, when the insulin receptor doesn't work right. And there's three things I have found that causes the insulin receptor not to work right. And the first one is when the cell gets too large. The door just doesn't work well. Have you ever been in the wintertime and the door just doesn't work as well and it kind of sticks? Or the window? And so if the cell gets too big, then the door just doesn't work well. Well, all you have to do is shrink the cell. The problem is the cell's too big, so you shrink the cell. Why is it too big? Because usually it's outside of ideal body weight. And you shrink it down into ideal body weight. And we'll talk about that in a minute. The second thing that causes the cell not to open right is it gets clogged up. And it gets clogged up with fats. Who's ever worked on a farm or run a tractor? Anybody? Y'all know what a three-point hitch is. And you've got your top bar on the three-point hitch. And so whether you're bush hogging or disking or blading or whatever, that top bar, it adjusts the tilt on your implement. Well, sometimes you're just out, when you're out bush hogging, there's a lot of dust and or you're whatever you're doing with the implement, and it just gets clogged up. And it's nasty. And so what you do is you take it off and you unscrew it off and you wash it, and it might be gasoline. We used to use gasoline, with kerosene or something to wash it with. And then you put it back together and put grease in there, and it works fine. Y'all know what I'm talking about. So what happens is that insulin receptor gets clogged up with fat. Now, what kind of fat does it get clogged up in? Fortunately, unfortunately, fortunately, or unfortunately, we live in a part of the world that loves fried food. We fry taters, ice cream, pickles. We fry okra, poke, pigs. Yeah, absolutely. Twinkies, Oreos. If we can fry it, we fry it. Yes? Is that not true? We do. And if we don't fry it, we pour oil in it. And that oil clogs that insulin receptor. That's just our culture here in the South. And we do frying real good down here. And that oil clogs that up. So you got to stop the oil. And we'll talk about that. And the third thing that I found that causes that door not to work well is inflammation. According to Harvard University, the number one cause of inflammation, and we didn't cover it, I don't think, today because I don't think we did. We went through some slides and we didn't get to. The number one cause of inflammation in the United States, according to Harvard, is processed foods. The number one cause of inflammation is processed foods. Those of y'all have inflammation issues, take a look at what goes in here. I'm looking for a little young'un. There's no young'uns in here. There we go, yes. Can you help me? Come help me.
That's Truman.
Truman. Okay, come on, Truman. Help me out here.
Don't look so enthusiastic.
All right, there you go. Okay. Now, we have a species of the human body. Be careful what they're calling people now today. I understand just this week that one medical school has changed. It's no longer a female. It is a person. They've gone plumb nuts. So, what you've got trillions and trillions of cells. And what determines how well those cells work, we talked about this morning, is what? The blood. The quality of the blood determines how well he runs. And what you have to do is you have to stop the bad stuff from going in there. Now, what is some bad stuff that we can put in the blood? Sugar, alcohol, drugs, tobacco. Does alcohol get in the blood? Caffeine? Yes, processed foods. Anything refined, that kind of stuff, that messes with the blood. But you got to have the good stuff in the blood. Your fats, proteins, complex carbohydrates, your vitamins. Vitamins are the catalyst that makes the fats, proteins, and complex carbohydrates run at 8 cylinders. Even though you're eating 8 cylinders of fats, proteins, and complex carbohydrates, they're not going to run as 8 cylinders unless you have vitamins at 8 cylinders. And though you eat enough vitamins to be 8 cylinders, to turn on the fats, proteins, and complex carbohydrates, you got to have another catalyst, and that's minerals. And minerals have to be at 8 cylinders to turn on the vitamins to run 8 cylinders, to turn on the fats, proteins, and complex carbohydrates to run 8 cylinders. But then there's also another thing you need, enzymes. You got to have the enzymes to break these guys down. And if you don't have the enzymes to break them from macronutrients into micronutrients so they can absorb into the villi, the little vacuum cleaners in the small intestines that soak it up. If it's still macro, it's going to go right out the feces. If it's micro, it can go on in. It's kind of like, have you ever gone and watched them grade apples? And you got the little ones going first, then the mediums go in, then the big ones. Well, that's what's going on in the small intestines with the villi. It's letting the little guys go in, but the big guys, unless you have leaky gut. And so what's happening here? All this has to happen, and it needs to be the right stuff in the blood, but what determines that? Remember, whether therefore you eat or drink. And remember the other one, it said, in order to fix the body, you've got to fix the brain. In order to fix the brain, you've got to fix the blood, and by which you fix the blood by what you eat and what you drink. God's told us the answer. And so the key here is, so let's say that you eat a Twinkie. You're going to have Twinkie blood, and then you're going to have a Twinkie brain. Yes? It's true. That's the way it was. And then if you eat chickens, you're going to have chicken blood, then you're going to have chicken brains. And so whatever you put in your mouth is what blood you have. Whatever blood you have is what your body is, what those cells are. Pardon?
So you need to eat an elephant brain?
I hope we don't eat elephants. So do you see how it works? It's really, really simple. And so the key is, yes, it's true. Exercise and rest and all those things do affect blood. We've proven that. But God has showed us two major ones. It's what you stick in your mouth, the food and what we drink. Thank you, sir. And so as we look at diabetes, type 2, you've got that issue of inflammation. And the inflammation, the number one cause of inflammation where the door doesn't open right is, what was it?
Processed foods.
That's right, processed food. What's another one? A huge one that Harvard has identified is sleep deprivation. See, sleep deprivation increases CRP, C-reactive protein. And you can actually have a heart attack because of sleep deprivation. And the way that works is, when you don't have enough sleep, it then elevates CRP, C-reactive protein. CRP is going to start scarring and inflaming the vascular walls. And then cholesterol is going to come through and try to take care of that problem, even at the right levels. Because remember, over 50% of patients that have a massive heart attack have normal cholesterol. Isn't that interesting? Over 50% of the people who have an MI, a massive myocardial infarction, have normal cholesterol. So it tells you, who's the bad guy really? And so what happens is the cholesterol goes and it starts addressing these problems with inflammation and scarring in the vessels and the vascular system, and then we start having over time, we start having plaque buildup. And now we're starting to have what? Atherosclerosis. And then we can have an occlusion. And that can cause the heart attack. And the heart attack is due to what? It's due to the occlusion, which is due to the plaque buildup, which is due to the cholesterol coming in and trying to repair this scarring and inflammation, which was due to what? Elevated CRP, which was due to what? Sleep deprivation. Isn't that amazing? A person can have a massive heart attack and they had it because they just didn't have enough sleep. Do we ever have that? Yes. Yeah, it sure can happen. Stress increases inflammation. Sugar increases inflammation. Dehydration. There's a lot of things that increase inflammation. And yes, we need inflammation. Did you know that? We do need some inflammation. If we don't have some inflammation, then our sores will fester. We got to have some inflammation, just like we got to have some cholesterol. Do we need a zero cholesterol level? No. We've got to have some cholesterol. You got to have some inflammation, but in the right levels. So we've got to lower that inflammation. So how do we shrink the cell? How do we get rid of the oil? And how do we address the inflammation? Well, was a guy who went to Duke University in 1933. His name was Walter Kempner. Walter Kempner. He was German. He was a medical doctor. He was also a scientist. He left Germany. He thought they were kind of plumb crazy, but he was encouraged to leave Germany. He thought it would just blow over, and it wouldn't be a problem. For some reason, some folks didn't like Jews, and he thought it would just blow over. Well, fortunately, he left Germany because he was Jewish. He could have easily have died over there. So he left right before everything kind of went crazy. And he went to Duke. And he started putting the program together in 1934. And it turned out to be an amazing reversal of diabetes program. It's probably the best reversal of cardiovascular disease program in the world. It also is an excellent program to reverse renal failure. And also it's a good program to lose weight. I went there and to look at their program, I met a lady who had lost over 200 pounds. There was a guy there that he was large, big guy. And he went to ideal body weight, diabetes was normal, and I mean, he just did very, very well. And so what's the program? I went to to Africa several years ago and had an opportunity to speak with their government folks on health, lifestyle health. And they said, well, while you're here, can you do a lifestyle program? And, first of all, they said, can you teach our people how to do lifestyle health? I said, well, the best way to do that, yes, but the best way is to have patients. And so let's do a lifestyle program. And so we got people to come to train how to do lifestyle, and we got patients. And we ran around, I think we had around 50 patients. And so everything was going good. People doing well. And then this man and this lady walked in. And he was the second in command for health in the country. And the lady was the top WHO person for the country. What are you doing here? Now, if you know Rwanda, Rwanda is not your normal backstreet place. What happened in 92, President Paul does never want to happen again. President Paul is the guy who came in as general and stopped it. Almost every street corner, you've got machine guns. You've got shotguns. You've got the military. You've got the police. They will never allow an uprising again. I mean, they're ready to, you mess up. Some visitor, some tourist was jogging and jogged past the presidential palace, President Paul's palace, and some man hollered to him in Kinyarwanda, halt. He didn't know Kinyarwanda. He kept running. They shot him. I mean, they're serious over there. They mean business. You don't mess with them. And here is the second top guy in health standing there. What are you doing here? And the top person in WHO. So I told them what we were doing, and they looked at all the documentation that I was keeping, talked to and interviewed all these people that were there, and then they come back up. They had their powwow and came back, and he said, our non-communicable diseases have been going up and up and up. And we've been using more and more pharmaceuticals to address them. It's not working. We've been spending more and more money, and it's not working. And he says, he, and the top person with WHO have been looking for a program to be effective. And we haven't been able to find one till today. You're not going back to the United States. Well, I knew he could do that. I mean, he literally could do that. And I said, well, you better talk to my wife. He had a little bit of a smile, not much. And he says, okay, you're coming back and you're training our doctors and you're training our nutritionists. That program was the program that this doctor at Duke University had put together in the mid-1930s, Dr. Walter Kempner. Fortunately, I've been able to go back to Africa and teach those folks. Now I haven't been for the last little bit because of the situation, so I Zoom teach those classes for them. What's the difference there? I mean, here's a guy, here's a country that says, what we're using isn't working. Here's something does work. Let's use it. And no, it didn't come through the FDA. They don't have the FDA. And it's huge, big difference. They saw results. They wanted those results. So what did Kempner do? It's real simple. Breakfast is 1 cup of brown rice and 3 servings of fruit. A serving is each, apple, orange, pear, whatever. But if you have diabetes, if grapes or bananas makes it go crazy, this doesn't mean you can now eat bananas and grapes right now. Wait, hold on. Maybe a half a banana or something. Now in Africa, they're different. They're not happy with just 3 servings. They wanted more. So what we did is we took the plate, and it's beautiful. They took the plate, they put 1 cup of brown rice in the middle, and then they cut up 3 servings. And I tell you what, who's ever had a tree tomato? A tree tomato. Aren't they good? They are. Never had anything taste like that. And their pineapple, pineapples here, if I eat too much, hardly any, my mouth breaks out. I can eat as much as I want. Wow. And it doesn't bother me, and they're delicious. What was another one?
Probably the white pineapple.
They are. They're white. Jackfruit. I don't like jackfruit in the can. I mean, Mary's had it in the can. She's had it frozen in a refrigerator or whatever. But you have jackfruit brought to you fresh. Oh, that's delicious. Have you had jackfruit? In the can. Oh, you ain't had nothing yet. I mean, fresh. This lady brought it to me. This last time I was there, her husband is the general, the Army's general. And you don't mess with her because he'll come after you. And she brought it to me as a gift. And they were delicious. And so what they did is they would put their bowl they'd take a bowl, fill it full of 1 cup of brown rice, turn it over, stick it in the middle of the plate, and they would take 6 fruit and put it there, 6 half servings in there. That was breakfast. For the noon meal, dinner as we call it here, was 1 cup of brown rice and a big old salad. But no dressing, no oil, no salt, no cheese, no meat. And if you're at Duke, they're charging you $6,500 a month just to eat this stuff. But they want you there for 2 months, so that's how much? $13,000. Plus you have to have a room at one of the hotels there in Durham. It's expensive. You can put lemon juice on there at Duke. I tell folks, if you want some salsa on there, put some salsa. I mean, sometimes you have to negotiate with people. But that didn't work in Africa. They didn't like salad. They didn't like mixing everything together where I was. And so what they did, it was beautiful. They would take their bowl, brown rice in the middle, then they have their lettuce, and they'd have their, avocado. Well, here's another problem. And then people they don't go past a meal without having avocados. They love avocados. And so I said, it's mixing fruits and vegetables. No, we're going to have our avocados. Okay, when in Rome. And so they had their avocados for breakfast. They had them for dinner. And so they had vegetables, all raw vegetables all around. It's beautiful, beautiful. That was the fuel. The next key that Kempner found was water. Water is very important, super, super important. How much water do we need? According to University of California at Davis, it takes a half a gallon to run a 5-year-old. A half a gallon to run a 5-year-old, 4 water bottles, up to 128 pounds. Over 128 pounds is body weight divided by 2. Body weight divided, unless you're really obese, and there's another formula, but there's nobody here there. So if you're 200 pounds, how many ounces of water do you need a day? 100 ounces. That's to sit on the couch. But if you're a firefighter, according to the Tennessee Fire Academy up in Bell Buckle, you need minimum a gallon of water a day if you're a firefighter, because you may have a house fire today. But when I fight fire with the U.S. Forest Service or the Park Service, they ask me to drink a gallon of water every hour and a half because it's really, really hot. So I like to watch my lights, my electrolytes. I like taking trace minerals with that. But then how do you drink the water? Last fall, I took another class. And it was really cool. We got this equipment for monitoring labs. And one of the items that we monitored was hydration. And so we would measure our hydration in family or whatever. And then they say, okay, we want to make sure it's body weight divided by 2. You need that many ounces of water. Better. And they said, now what we want you to do is we want you to go takes that much water 3 to 4 times every half hour. That's all. Well, why? Well, yes, back when we were in school and we took physiology, we learned that there's something called free flow. And anything over 3 to 5 ounces, depending on which textbook you read, you'd have free flow. Free flow. And so it's kind of like a sponge. You pour water on a sponge, it's going to soak up so much and it's going to run on the table. Or let's say you're growing your tomato and you pour 5 gallons of water in your tomato, and what's going to happen with it? It's going to overflow. But you can put a soaker hose and it's going to just do a whole lot better. So what this doc down in, I think I talked about him last night, the guy who was friends with Einstein, who was a physicist. He found if you would take 3 to 4 times every half hour a sip of water, and he found 4 ounces seemed to be the biggest. Only drink 4 ounces every half hour. 4 ounces every half hour, 8 ounces every hour, a water bottle every 2 hours, except 15 minutes before you eat, while you eat, to an hour after you eat. And y'all know the reasons for that. It affects digestion. 15 minutes before you eat, while you eat, to an hour. Y'all know what an hour is, don't you? Okay. An hour after you eat. There is a difference in flatland and mountain talk, isn't there? Y'all, flatland says an hour, and mountain folks would say an hour. But the rest of the time of the day, you're drinking, 3 to 4 times every half hour. Unless it's, fellas, you're having some challenges at night, and so really start slow down around 5 o'clock. Don't drink as much as you start having prostate issues, but that's another issue. Use some other things to help the prostate, and you might be able to fix that. So Kempner found water drinking is very, very important. So it's not just body weight divided by 2, that many ounces if you're over 128 pounds, but it's also just, you just want to let it just, every little bit, you're going to have better saturation instead of it just going straight to the bladder and you urinate that out. Unless you're really dehydrated. People who are really dehydrated, you can down a bottle and you don't urinate. Then the other thing that Kempner found was, and this was really interesting, he had his patients exercise 4 times a day. 4 times a day. Now, when I was at the clinic, I would each morning at 6 o'clock, I'd sit down with our patients, and I'd take the blood sugar, and then let's say it was 180, 160, 180, 190, and I'd have them do a 30-minute power walk and come back. And it was usually in the 120s. Well, I mentioned this to a fellow at Loma Linda, a friend of mine who was a professor there, and he said, that's interesting. And I saw him a couple years later, and he says, Walt, we did some research on what you told me. And he says, we found that just a 20-minute power walk lowers the blood sugar more than 1 shot of insulin. Isn't that amazing? A 20-minute power walk lowers the blood sugar more than 1 shot of insulin. So Kempner, a genius, back in the 30s, he figured let's just walk those diabetics 4 times a day, and he found good results. And that was like taking 4 shots of insulin. Amazing. And the other thing Kempner found was go to bed by 9 o'clock. Go to bed early. And it's amazing what going to bed early does for the body physiologically. Now, Kempner, he didn't add that most important part that you and I would add. And what is that? Trusting God. Yes. Now, I don't know his religious background, what he was doing, but it wasn't incorporated into the official program there at Duke University to pray. Does the program work? It does. I mentioned last night some outcomes. Again, let's go back to Africa. The last time I was there, a lady was, and I'll mention again what we mentioned last night, a lady was, she came in at $3.99. She was on insulin. She was on metformin, 1,000 milligrams twice a day. I don't remember her insulin level, how much insulin. But in 14 days. Now, this lady, when she came in, she had to come in with a cane. She had to ambulate with assistance. By the time she left, she could literally go like this. Not too far. I mean, fast, but she was, everybody walked. I mean, we walked. At least 20 minutes. A lot of the folks were walking much more than that. And she was taking that little jog. Within a week, we were able to get her to do that. We did modify it a little bit, though. I used Dr. Agatha's recommendation, and that is we fasted them for 3 days first. And they did it. It was amazing. Dr. Thrash said it works so much better when they fast for 3 days. I stayed with an ambassador at his home, and I was going one morning, the first time I was there, and the first class we did, he was in it with me. And he said, Walt, now this guy had been an ambassador to Israel. He had been the CEO of Rwandan Airlines. He had been the minister of the minister of agriculture for the country. He had been one of the major people for the African Bank for the whole continent of Africa. He was a very well-known gentleman. And he said, Walt, he said, never gone to bed hungry. He says, when I was a boy, grew up in Rwanda, and then fled to Uganda, north of, is that Uganda? Straight north? I think it's Uganda. Straight north. And they fled to there. But he said, Walt, I've never gone to bed hungry. This is the first time. He says, but there's a difference. And he's got a very nice home. Very nice home. He says, I can get up at any time I want to during this fast and walk down to the kitchen and get whatever I want to eat. And he says, those people out on the street, he says, they can't do that. He says, I have a better knowledge of what those folks are doing out on the street, what they're feeling. It's amazing. When I went to the Lifestyle Center, I got there and I noticed that they were only giving the diabetic patients breakfast and dinner. So I went and talked to the docs and I said, listen, I said, you can't do this. You got to have breakfast, dinner, supper, mid-morning snack, mid-afternoon snack, an HS snack, hour of sleep snack. And so they decided to play with me. Why? Well, because it's standard of practice. It's what the American Dietetic Association recommends. And then they asked one more question, and I had to walk out and leave. They said, how many diabetics do you reverse where you come from? None. And there we were having over a 98% reversal rate. They got me. It worked. And I asked Dr. Agatha later, I said, Dr. Agatha, why are we skipping supper? And the mainstream's not. And this is working. And she says, they just don't understand. And I really miss her. Y'all that knew Dr. Agatha, such a humble lady. And she said, Brother Walt, she says, when you extend that fast from break fast, from supper to breakfast, from dinner to breakfast, she says it reverses diabetes much, much faster. Well, when we did the 3-day fast, we even had a faster result. So this lady comes in, and she's got a 399. She's on insulin. She's on 2,000 milligrams of metformin. In 14 days, she's on no insulin, no metformin. Her blood sugar is 115, and she's doing the little jog. Amazing, isn't it? Now, was her diabetes reversed? No. We were managing it through the program. And so what Kempner would do is you stay on the program until you come to ideal body weight. Because remember, obesity does make a difference. And she was overweight. And so you come to ideal body weight. You've got a normal fasting blood sugar. You have a normal A1C. And then you can go to plan B. And I kind of look at it like, Dave's gone. Lynn, you like cars? Okay, so you're out driving out one Sunday afternoon, and there's no 1957 Chevy. Boy, that's nice looking. It's out there just sitting in this field, and you go in there and you say, have you ever thought of getting rid of that car? And this lady goes, that junker out there, get rid of it. I don't want that thing. It just looks nasty. And you say, I'll be glad to take care of it, ma'am. And you go and you get your trailer and you get that car and you take it back and you refurbish it. So you go into the refurbishing phase. You got to strip it down. You got to sand it down. You got to take the upholstery off. You got to rebuild the motor, and you restore it. That's the restoration stage, which has the grinder and all that stuff. But once you get that car restored, do you still take a grinder to it? No, you go into the maintenance stage. And the maintenance stage is where you wax it and wash it and change your oil as needed and do everything you're supposed to. So what Kempner did is in the restoration stage is the brown rice diet. So I use the Duke model for the restoration stage. But then from there, I go over to Cornell University to Dr. T. Colin Campbell, and we go to the whole food plant-based diet with variety. And I thought it was really interesting when I was taking those courses from Cornell and with them, and they spent all that time, 20-some years, to figure out the best diet in the world. It was Cornell and Cambridge, 20-something years. And all they had to do was turn to Genesis 3. It's Genesis 3 diet. That's what it was. It's that whole food, plant-based diet. That's the maintenance diet. That is the diet which provides maintenance. And when people stay on that maintenance diet, whole food, key, whole food, then we don't see the diabetes come back. As long as they still maintain the other parts of Kempner's protocol, drinking plenty of water, getting the exercise, going to bed on time, we see that type 2 diabetes. It's gone. Now, one of the things you want to look on losing weight is you want to go to ideal body weight. And you look at the BMI, body mass index. Well, don't be plumb over to. So you've got your BMI. You got green and yellow and orange and red or whatever. You want to be in the green. I call that my diabetes chart. If you're in the green, it's going to be a significant help that first part, keeping the cell at the right size. You can have a person who's like this young lady right here, who's ideal body weight, but she still has type 2 diabetes. It could be she's eating a lot of fried food. It could be she has a lot of inflammation. So you can still have type 2 diabetes and not be overweight. You still have those other two problems. You got to get rid of all three problems. But as you look here, it's interesting, Dr. Agatha and Duke agreed. You've got your 24, BMI 24, and so, we'll just flirt and stay right here on the line. And both of them said, don't flirt and stay on the line. Come back one to a 23, because you're just one Christmas, one Thanksgiving, one cruise, one whatever of jumping into overweight. And so stay down here. So when you do have that extra, pop up to the 24 where you're still in the green. Now, if you want to come down below it and go to a 22 or 21, you're fine. But just don't go above 23. And that is how we reverse type 2 diabetes. And it works extremely well. Any questions on type 2 diabetes? Yes, ma'am.
I've heard that rice, I don't know if that meant white rice, can raise your blood sugar.
Kempner started with white rice and sugar. He found out real quick that didn't work too good. And so we went to a brown rice. It needs to be brown rice.
So it has to be.
It's got to be brown rice.
Doesn't raise your blood sugar.
Mm-mm. Now, here's a caution. You may have a person who has gout, and we have found folks with gout, the brown rice does affect the uric acid and go to quinoa. Mm-hmm. Yes?
Will that be the same for gestational diabetes?
That's a different situation. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you wouldn't recommend that? Like the brown rice?
Yes. I would still, there's a different cause there. And so once, you want that good nutrition during pregnancy, and after, if there's still some issues, go to this program. Yes. Now, what do you put in the rice? At Duke, it's just brown rice. You got to negotiate with people. You got to make it, sometimes you got to negotiate. So Mary Lou's come up with a recipe that's really good that folks like. She'll take, a cup of rice, soak it overnight, and then 2.5 cups of water, rinse it in 2.5 cups of water the next morning. And then to make it really good, you can take it and dextrinize it. Y'all know what dextrinizing is? You stick it in an orange skillet, and you just kind of heat it kind of low, and it starts popping, and you can hear it crackling like Rice Krispies. It smells real good. And that dextrinizing helps in that breaking down process. It tastes a lot lighter. It tastes a lot better. The soaking overnight is you're going to have, that's going to make it healthier. Also increase your, what is it you increase? I just forgot. I'll think of it in a minute. But then, so what she does, she rinses it, washes it, and then she puts 2.5 cups of water, and then she'll chop up a 1/4 cup of scallions, 1/4 cup of green onions. Pardon? The whole. Here's the problem, Mary Lou. She don't do recipes. She's a taste cook. Dump cook, yes. And so whatever looks good and whatever tastes. But I think it's around a 1/4 cup of the brown rice. Of the scallions, 1/4 cup of cilantro, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric. I think is what she has in there. Turmeric. Yes, turmeric. Did I say cumin? Turmeric. Turmeric's what you want. And that works real well. It's a great anti-inflammatory, and it just makes it taste a little better. It's really good. You'll like it. And then you can make enough and put it in your rice cooker, and you can make enough for several days and reheat it. And it works great. Any other questions? Oh, the question, yes.
Cinnamon. You've heard people talk about how cinnamon lowers blood sugar.
Yes. So I used to use Genema sylvestre, which seemed to be the best. Genema sylvestre, fenugreek, cedarberry, blueberry leaf, peach tree leaf, basil, holy basil, yes, cinnamon, All those guys will normalize blood sugar. But what were we doing? Oh, let me see if I can remember them again. You've got Genema sylvestre.
What's that?
Genema sylvestre, it's an herb. It's probably the best in helping to normalize blood sugar.
Using without folic acid or spinach will help to regenerate the iris.
Okay. It works very, very well. Fenugreek, cedarberry, blueberry leaf, basil, holy basil. I had this guy call me one time. He's an old farmer. And he said, Walt, I found something to help me with my blood sugar. I said, what? And farmers are smart people, you know. They're good at analyzing stuff, or they wouldn't make it. He says, I've got my diabetes under control. I said, what'd you do? He's just an old mountain fella from Del Rio, but we say Dario. And that's like saying Merville. And so he said, I noticed the other day not long ago when I went out to eat, my blood sugar got better. And he said, what did I do different? He says, well, I went out to eat. And he says, I went to this restaurant, and what did I have different? And he ate certain things, but what was different? He said, I put some basil. He thought, well, let me try. So he had some basil plants growing at home, so he started just eating some basil. He'd eat it, I think he said a leaf 3 times a day, or 2 or 3 leaves 3 times a day. He says, you know what? My blood sugar's perfect near normal now. Yes, ma'am.
Doesn't Ellen White speak against cinnamon?
I'm getting there. Thank you. And so the last one, yes, cinnamon. The problem with cinnamon, black pepper, white pepper, vinegar, those guys irritate the mucosa. Do they taste good? Yeah, they taste good. But they damage the mucosa. And see, you got to take care of the mucosa. You got to take care of the gut. And if you don't take care of the gut, you're going to have problems. You got problems here, you got problems here. You got problems all over if you have gut problems. And see, you got digestive enzymes that come out of the mucosa. Your mucosa protects your stomach from the lining from the hydrochloric acid. Don't mess with the mucosa. Protect the mucosa. And yes, cinnamon can damage the mucosa. So yes, apple cider vinegar has some good benefits, but it also has a negative that you got to take a look at. Yes, anything else?
So can you take something with cinnamon to counteract? Okay, I'm thinking here like golden paste where they do turmeric and they actually add cinnamon and it adds black pepper and it adds a few things which really help inflammation. So you're doing something like that. Do you leave out the cinnamon or do the other ingredients kind of block each other out somehow?
No, you still have the side effects. You still have the negative effects. And there is a company called Curaman who has figured out how to use turmeric and take the curcumin out of turmeric and not have to have the black pepper and still have the same effect. Most of the companies have to have black pepper to make the curcumin work together for anti-inflammatory. But a company called Curaman, who is it, Mary Lou? Europharma. Terry Naturally. That man has come up with a formula that he's been able to take the turmeric, the curcumin in the turmeric, he adds boswellia. What's boswellia? It's frankincense. And he doesn't have to use the black pepper, and we see the good benefit, and that's why I like that company. And actually, Dr. Agatha is the one that turned me on to that company because of that. Yes?
Do you have a suggestion to replace them?
You don't, for the diabetes?
No.
Just for taste? I don't know, Mary Lou, have you got one? To replace cinnamon taste, do you have anything natural that's coriander? Cardamom. Talk to her. I don't know food that good, but she's good at food. But I quit doing those herbs because what happened was people started depending on the genema, the fenugreek, the cedarberry, all those guys. And we weren't reversing the diabetes. We were managing it through, instead of pharmaceuticals, we were managing it through herbs. Plumb reverse it. That's the best thing. Now, yes, you can use trichromium by now. Trichromium has it has chromium picolinate, chromium picolinate, and one other chromium. I forgot the name of it. But that's what's in those guys, especially in the Genema. It's chromium. That's what really makes it stabilize the blood sugar. And so, yes, you can take trichromium, 1 capsule a day, and it's very economical. And sometimes I have people do it just to speed the process up. But I'm even cautious because I don't want them to say, oh, I've got it under control now. I can go off this diet and I can still go back to my hog jowl and chitlins and biscuits and gravy and all that, and I can manage it through. You see what you want to look at? You want to change the lifestyle. Not just, and God's herbs are great, but what's the root issue that you want to do? Any other questions on type 2 diabetes? Gestational diabetes? I would go ahead and use this program. It's because not only does this program, obviously, yeah, you just got to wait until things are finished. And then, but type 1 and type 2, I use the same protocol. So you still do the Duke program and still use that. Now, type 1 diabetes is a total different diabetes. It's totally different. Anybody want to guess what's the number 1 cause of type 1 diabetes according to
Milk?
what?
I said milk. Because some of the milk products.
Anyone else have another suggestion? He's right. According to Cornell University and Cambridge University, the number 1 cause of type 1 diabetes is dairy. It increases a child's risk, according to Cornell University, by 1,100%.
It's similar in protein, the body's allergic response.
It's exactly right.
Also, there's some research that I lightly touched into in microtubules, not only there's a plethora or overbuilding the microtubules within the cell, and it kind of doesn't allow the insulin. But I touched lightly on that.
Yeah, the biggest one is dairy. Milton Crane. Who remembers Milton Crane at Loma Linda? Anybody remember Milton Crane? Great guy. He loved, especially at the end, he wanted to tell everything so that he could pass on that vast knowledge that he had. And Crane's the first one told me it was dairy. And Crane said you can reverse type 1 diabetes if you catch it in the honeymoon period. And the honeymoon period is around 8 to 12 months. Today they say it's not that, it's different per person.
Regenerate, they're finding out that those pancreatic cells regenerate, but the immune system kicks in and nail it. So the immune system is an inflammatory deal. So you type 1, type 2, if you can change, some of the herbal remedies change it from type 1 or type 2. You can change the reaction of the antibody defense cell that attacks those pancreatic cells.
So what he said to do, take away the cause. What's the cause? The dairy. Yeah, the dairy, the ice cream. I had a lady one time, she had a little boy, 6 years old, and I told her to do away with the dairy. She said, that would be abusing my child to not allow him to have an ice cream sandwich. Isn't that crazy? I'll get there. Yes. So for the child, remember it used to be adult onset diabetes and juvenile diabetes, and then until we started having kids, 16, 14, 12, starting to have adult onset diabetes. Well, that didn't work because it's not adult onset, so you had to change it. And so it went to type 1, type 2. Well, so Crane said, if you can catch it in that, again, incipient stage, which is called the honeymoon stage, if you do 3 things, he said. Number 1, stop the cause, biggest cause, dairy. Number 2, do the New Zealand niacinamide study. Niacinamide. And so you go on, just Google, pardon?
NAD, nicotine riboside is very helpful. It's the NAD metabolic pathway. Yeah.
And so what you do is you take the weight of the child in kilograms to X, how much niacinamide, and you can go online and see what that formula is, and it will tell you how much to give the child. The third thing is something we don't normally do, and that is as soon as the child finishes eating, Crane said, exercise them as hard as you can exercise them, which is different because normally you don't want to exercise hard after a meal. You want to stroll. But in this case, he found it to be very beneficial. For the adult, your question for the adult. How many of y'all have watched the movie, Simply Raw? Simply Raw. Dr. Cousins, he's out I think he's in New Mexico or Arizona or somewhere out there. And he's got a program out there for type 2 patients. But he's found that this program also has helped with type 1, and that is just eating raw food. Plum raw. Nothing else. Nothing cooked. Just plum raw. Here's what he does. Plum raw. Y'all know what plum means? Okay. I was in Venezuela, and the interpreter stopped and goes, "What does plums have to do with that sentence?" But totally raw for y'all who aren't from around here. Plum raw. Exercise. Here we go again. Exercise, hydration, and going to bed and getting sleep. So very similar. Just it didn't have the rice. He just did plum raw. 1 month, 30 days. And then that was his program, but until the person was totally reversed, he would have them stay on the raw. And then so however long. If you have a 400-pound person, it's going to take more than 30 days to come to ideal body weight. And so they stay raw until, sure, not a problem. And so they stay raw until they are totally reversed. The last one, Cousins, like your cousin, like your second cousin, third cousin, Dr. Cousins. I don't remember his first name. He's out in Arizona, I think it is. And you can go online and YouTube Simply Raw, put movie. Simply Raw movie. And it's an interesting, it really is. And so, yes, there's been some benefits of total raw reversing type 1. Yes, ma'am.
Are you familiar with the research that talks about if you fast 3 days, it completely resets your immune system? Gets rid of all the cells and you have a completely reset. Maybe that has something to do with
Maybe.
that.
I know the 3 days is huge.
3 or 4.
Yeah, 3 days is the big number. It really is. We see some other benefit in 5, but 3 is the big difference. It's good to fast 1 day. Dr. Agatha would say if you'll do just one thing, fast 1 day a week. Now, Dr. Calvin, he liked 2 days a week, but 1 day a week, she'd say, just give me 1 day. Yes, sir.
Can you repeat their question?
Oh, yes. The question was
How you reset your
yes, how you reset the immune system by fasting. Yes, and fasting can reset. On autoimmune diseases, I'm kind of taking a rabbit trail here, but the best thing I found for autoimmune diseases is doing juicing, is doing a 60-day juice fast. Who's watched Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead?
There's another way. Capers are high in quercetin. That it causes apoptosis within the senile cells. Also, resveratrol will cause that. That'll lower the inflammation. There's some other agents, a chemical called acoginin on the parsley, celery, cilantro, and vitamin T to stop inflammatory enzymes. Also shuts down protein acid cycle cancer, but it's also good for dementia.
Yes. Isn't God good?
Yeah.
He's given us all these chemicals, and we're going to talk about those tomorrow, that there's no side effects as we look at the herbs and not having side effects versus, things that do have the side effects. And so,
My daughter has Addison's, and it's an autoimmune. Are you saying it's possible with a 60-day juice?
to have some significant benefits, yes. Watch the movie Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. He's Australian. It's a documentary.
sick.
Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. A-N-D. Spell it out. www.fatsickandnearlydead.com. Movie 1 is good. Movie 2 he messed up on. He messed up because he said all you have to do now is just eat in moderation anything you want. Well, he found out that didn't work too well after he did the movie. So you need to scrap that one. But 1 is good. 1's great. Is juicing healthy? Is juicing something that's viable? Well, people say, well, you can't juice that long. It's too dangerous. That's very dangerous. Well, when Mary Lou was down at Birmingham at UAB, their cardiologists there on their advanced cardiac team, if a patient really, really had a very weak heart, they would have them juice for 70 days. Now, this is UAB. They're a cardiologist. Why? Because digestion of food is the second major event of heart energy expenditure. And when you work with when you got a cardiac patient, you don't have big meals for them. You have smaller meals for them because it's hard on the heart.
Saffron actually helps to regenerate new mitochondria, which is good for the heart. Saffron's also anti-cancer. So, there's a lot of things about saffron.
Yes. Saffron's good stuff.
With that in mind, what about eating at 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night?
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
I think so.
So when you eat a meal with fiber, like we just had, according to nutritionists, it takes as much vital force to digest what we just ate as it does to go to the gym. That's pretty big. But when you take the fiber out and you extract just the juice, it's in the blood within 15 to 20 minutes at max. And so you net more energy because you're not spending as much energy digesting it. And so they figured that out down at UAB. And so they'll put those really bad cardiac patients on a 70-day juice, and it works very well. Yes?
My mother had arthritis so bad that the doctor told her you can fuse standing up or lying down. She went on a 90-day fast and got rid of her arthritis.
Arthritis. Boy, it's easy to get off, isn't it? Arthritis? No, I'm glad you said it. Arthritis, why do these fasts work for arthritis? Well, and Dr. Thrash told me, I really miss her. She had so much knowledge and was willing to share with you. She told me one time, she said, Brother Walt, she said, the biggest issue on arthritis is wheat. She says 1 cracker will kick on inflammation for arthritis for up to 2.5 months. Just 1 cracker. The same thing she said for psoriasis, eczema, and rosacea. Just 1 cracker. Do y'all know what thermal imaging is? Thermal imaging? Yes. Y'all know Chester Clark, Dr. Chester, Chester down at Dalton, his daddy, the pastor, his daddy, Dr. Clark. He's a dentist. Dr. Clark uses thermography and thermal imaging for his work. And he told me, he said, Walt, he said, thermography can pick up breast cancer 5 years before it's large enough for mammography to pick it up and see it. Isn't that amazing? So I went to a seminar just over the road, over in Cleveland, and it was a seminar on thermal imaging. And the physicians that read thermal imaging, they claim if they look at everybody in this room and look at our colons, they can tell whether or not we've had any wheat, American wheat, in our colon for the last 12 months.
Oh, wow.
12 months, because it's the inflammation. There is a difference in wheats. It's the wheat that's the 42 chromosomes.
So GMO wheat.
It's the super hybridized wheat, yes. Yes. Now, the European wheat, no. The European wheat from EU, it's illegal in the EU to super hybridize. So it's 14 or 16 chromosomes. You can go and look at jovial wheat or some of those wheats on Amazon, and that's okay. Plus, it's illegal in the EU to use Roundup. So those are the 2 issues, the hybridization and the Roundup.
It isn't the wheat, it's what they've done to the wheat that
Correct.
causes arthritis.
Because we need wheat. Wheat is very healthy for us. It's got vitamin E. It's got a lot of good nutrients. But the problem, even the einkorn wheat, people would send me einkorn wheat, and I would test it, send it either to UT or I send it to other labs, and you know what it'd be? 42 chromosomes. But it was einkorn. They told me it was 16. Well, maybe it started that way, but it was grown near someone else, and it cross-pollinated.
If it's organic, will it have the extra chromosomes, or will it have?
If it's organic, it's not supposed to have the Roundup, but it can still be the 42 chromosomes. It's just like organic can be hybrid food.
So what kind of wheat variants do we need?
So you can actually order wheat out of Europe.
Where do you get that?
You can get off Amazon. You can go. There's various places you can get it, but it's got to come out of Europe.
What kind of wheat?
It's just the ancient wheat, the einkorn wheat from Europe.
What was that word used?
Einkorn, I-N-K-O-R-N or something like that. E-I-N? E-I-N? Okay. Y'all know I can't spell. Lynn knows I can't spell. I spell phonetically, and that and the way I talk don't work. And so he was talking about suppers. What does supper do? Well, Dr. Coop, he found that when you eat breakfast, it increases metabolism, you burn calories. He then found when you eat dinner, it increases metabolism and it burns calories. But he found at around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, our metabolism starts shutting off. And when we eat after 3 o'clock, we're not burning those calories. The metabolism isn't increasing. And what does that do? We don't have good digestion because of that. And that's another reason why we only have breakfast and dinner in our lifestyle programs. It's not just for the folks who need to lose weight because it works better, because that does cause them to lose weight better, but not just because of the diabetes issue. It's just healthier for the body. But are those people who need 3 meals a day? Absolutely. Inspiration is very clear on that. There are people, some occupations or some individuals, the way their body is, they need 3 meals a day. Some people don't need it. Yes. Now, another thing is a good friend of mine, he's internal medicine, he called me last year and he said, Walt, there's some really cool stuff on the mitochondria. He says, I just went to a seminar. You remember the mitochondria? It looks kind of like rice and it's got little stripes on it. He said, we thought that the cancer is transmitted through the DNA, but we found that it's transmitted through the mitochondria. And he says, if you eat after 2:30 in the afternoon, he says the mitochondria becomes unhealthy. Even those little stripe things change. And he said both for preventing cancer and if you have cancer, it's healthier for the mitochondria. You're less prone to get the cancer if the mitochondria is healthy for it to transmit or to pass. Or if you do have cancer, it's because cancer is a spreading thing. It doesn't spread as well if the mitochondria is now healthier. And he said, if we don't eat after 2:30 in the afternoon. And I said, well, George, this is interesting. What about Dr. Coop's work on the metabolism at 3 o'clock? He hadn't heard about that. So something's going on in our bodies around that time in the afternoon when it's best if we stop the major eating process. Mitochondria. It's a little guy that's in our cells. The Energizer Bunny. There you go. I'm trying to think. What else? Anything else on type 1? Yes.
The question I was going to ask a moment ago was, when we're juicing, I'm thinking when I eat an orange, I'm chewing it, I'm mixing saliva with it.
Thank you.
When I'm drinking, it's
Yes.
going straight in.
Yes.
Is it best to hold the juice a little bit while in your mouth to mix some saliva with it so you're getting some saliva with your juicing where you don't tend when you're just drinking it straight down?
Good question. I was talking to, and thank you for reminding me. I meant to cover that a few minutes ago. I have a good friend, he's a physician, and he says, I don't like juicing for my patients. He says, it's not healthy. I said, why is it not healthy? He said, because you're missing a third of digestion. I said, explain to me. I wanted to hear him say it. He says, because you're not getting the saliva to break down the food in that juice. I said, but what if the person chews that juice? Would that work? He goes, yeah, that'd work. I'd have no problem with that.
And
So
you get to enjoy it a little longer.
you do enjoy it longer, plus there's something else that happens. So when you chew the juice, I tell people don't drink juice. Chew the juice. Chew the juice. Because just as he said, the amylase, the protease, the lipase, those other enzymes that are in the saliva, all you did is pull the fiber out. You still have all those fats, proteins, complex carbohydrates, the minerals, the vitamins, all that needs to be, well, especially fats, proteins, and complex carbohydrates, need to be broke down by the amylase, protease, and lipase. And if you swallow it, and definitely if it wasn't from heirloom seeds, you're not going to have it when it hits into the digestion process to break it down properly. So that doctor is exactly right. The other thing that happens when you chew it, yes, you enjoy it longer. It tastes good longer. But the other thing that we found was, and I haven't found an answer to this, is when you chew the juice, the person is less prone to complaining of they miss chewing stuff. Chewing things. Because if a person drinks their juice and you have them do a 60-day juice, then you'll have some complaint, I miss chewing food. But when they chew the juice, there's less of that. The other thing is when you chew, when you have a snake like a rattler and you push here and it make the venom come out, the chewing process makes more saliva. And so as you chew that juice, you're pumping more saliva into your mouth, more chainsaws to break it down. And so that chewing process also benefits.
What about
that.
the other thing? I understand under your tongue, it has the
Sublingual.
ability directly into the blood. Do you get some of that benefit too?
I can't answer if the,
Stretching.
I don't know if you will there because I don't know if you are sublingually going to get any digestion there. It's going to be more so in the small intestines.
Well, I wouldn't think about digestion. I was just thinking some things go directly into the bloodstream under
Oh,
the tongue.
I don't know. Maybe. I'd have to investigate that because we do have things that happen sublingually like that. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have a couple of questions. One is, what about corn?
Corn?
Corn raises your blood sugar. And I have some issues with digestion, and I have the issue of if I don't have anything at all to eat in the evening, I go into seizures.
Then I'd eat something.
So I'm like, well.
Yeah, I mean, it's the biggest thing for us to learn is there's not a cookie cutter.
Yeah.
It's not one thing for everybody. It's individualized. Everything's individualized. It really is. So corn, yes, corn is an issue as we look at how much corn out there is hybrid corn, Roundup Ready corn. And so we have to be careful there.
So it's like the wheat, they've done something to it, the corn in itself isn't bad.
No,
God made it.
right. It's the new corn that they, even alfalfa is now Roundup Ready.
So if you buy the right seed, like the heirloom seed for the corn, your corn should be fine?
The-
If you grow it yourself?
If you grow your corn and it is the heirloom seed, yes, it should be fine. Now, it doesn't mean that you may have some intolerances to it, just like you may with peanuts or whatever. Yes.
I never had intolerance before, but yeah, I'm seeing issues with it.
I would go to the heirloom corn. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a limit on how much juice per day?
How much to drink? Most people on Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, he does 16 ounces 3 to 4 times a day. How many of y'all have heard of Gershon? Gershon, they'll use 8 ounces every hour for 13 hours. So that's 104 ounces a day. At 96 ounces, you're getting over 2,000 calories. So it depends on what's... The complaint that I get with juicing, though, is when I have people juice, and then when they start eating food, even if it's even healthy food, they complain they didn't feel as good as they did when they were juicing. At first, they may go through a detox, a hurt syndrome, or the mental thing, But Mary made a bunch of juices this last week for a lady, and the first day, second day, third day, she has so much energy, and she just feels so much better. So you will have that possibly at the beginning. And so people, when they say, I don't feel like eating anymore. I just want a juice. No, you need to start eating. You need fiber. The body needs fiber. So mix it in. Do a day of fast. Do a day of juice fast. Do a day of eating raw. Mix in some, just have variety of different, and see what your body relates to the best. Yes, ma'am.
When you talk about eating after 3 or after 2:30, I just wanted to clarify that. You should be completely done eating at that point.
Correct.
For
Yeah.
those benefits.
For those benefits, yes.
Thank you.
Pardon? A break? Okay. Well, perfect time because we just did diabetes. We're going to come back, take a break. We're going to come back and do cardiovascular disease. How long is the break? It is 3:41, according to that clock.
You are doing cancer today.
Pardon? And cancer. Okay, 10 minutes. Be back at 10. Testing one, good. Okay, so cardiovascular, let's go back to Duke University with Kempner. How many of y'all have heard of John McDougall? McDougall says you can cure anything with the Duke diet, which is the Kempner rice diet. It's amazing. It really is. I've got a good buddy of mine. He's a surgeon up in D.C., and if he has a hard case to him, the Duke diet, Kempner's rice diet. It's amazing. It's so effective in addressing so many health issues. And for cardiovascular disease, it works well. I had a fellow who told me that his cardiologist has told him that he only had 2 to 3 months to live. His heart was in such failure. And so I drove to Nashville, and I showed him this diet, Kempner's diet. I asked him into 5 years of eating this diet. I said, do you ever get bored of eating just the Duke diet? And that's mostly what he did. He'd eat some stuff, but mostly he just ate the rice diet. I said, do you get bored of the rice diet? He goes, yes. He said, but I'd much rather eat the rice diet and still see my kids and my grandkids and my great-grandkids. And he lived just 1 month short of 6 years. And it wasn't the cardiac that killed him. So you can do it long term. You can definitely do it long term, and it helps many different areas. So the first thing as we look at cardiac, what's the nutrition? What is the cause? What's their lifestyle? And you want to take away the bad things. Let's start with cholesterol. My cholesterol was 288. And the guys at work said, Walt, you've got to go on a statin. Well, I'd already given and at that time, I was in my late 30s. I'd given up eating meat at 16 in the stockyard. I saw what we were taking in the stockyard. I saw what was coming to the stockyard. And this old cow come in, and she was sick. And who's been to the stockyard? Okay, so, if you had a sick cow, do you let that cow die? No, if you can't fix it, you take a stockyard and sell it. And I saw a lady, she came in the store the other day, and she's from Minnesota, and she's got a large ranch up in Minnesota with a lot of cattle. And I said, what do you do if you get a sick cow and you can't fix it? She said, I find a stockyard. I said, exactly. And so I was in the stockyard in Chippy, Florida, and this cow come in, and if you work with animals, you kind of get an idea. You look at their eyes, look at their gait, look at their head, how they're holding their head, and you can tell if she's sick or not. And she came in as obvious, straight out. She walked in, she was a sick cow. And when the auctioneer had her do a 360, she had this big old tumor. It was literally about this big, about this right behind her left shoulder is a big old cancer, it's a nasty cancer tumor. And I thought, we have a good school system, and I'd learned some, I'd already had some sciences, and the blood that runs through that nice steak that I enjoyed goes through that cancer tumor and comes back through that steak and goes back through that. I said, no, I'm not doing that no more. And so we didn't eat our cows because we started out as dairy cows, and Mom and Grandmother never would let us kill our own cows because it was number 53. It was number 64, It's them girls, and so you got to know them real good. And so even when we went to beef cattle, we still didn't eat our own cows. We'd go to the store and buy our own meat or go to a restaurant. How'd you know that cow I just saw go through that stockyard wasn't going to be at the restaurant when I was eating? So I quit eating meat. But I was still doing dairy.
How many other people in here stopped eating meat for that reason? I did at 15. The government report showed how bad it was that bunch of stuff went through.
Yep.
Were other people in here did that?
I don't know. So my cholesterol was 288. They told me I had to go on a statin, and I didn't want to go on a statin. And I changed. I didn't do dairy. I didn't do cholesterol. And my cholesterol went to 104. And what I saw was I was not genetically predisposed. I was maybe Adventist predisposed, I don't know. And what happened was I had quit eating cholesterol. And if a person, and I'll have folks argue with me till the cow comes home, that if your granddaddy smokes and he has lung cancer, and your daddy smokes and he gets lung cancer, and you smoke and you get lung cancer, that's genetically predisposed.
Because you're doing the same thing now.
No, that's not. But I'll have medical doctors argue with me. Oh, yes, that's genetically predisposed. No, I don't believe that. And so just because my daddy had heart disease, my granddaddy had heart disease, and I ate like they did, that's not genetics. It could be just because I ate like they did. We live here in East Tennessee, and we fry everything. Could be we're eating fried okra and pickles and cheese and whatever else fried. So look at lifestyle. That's huge. Yes.
I was gonna ask, that eggs as well, right, when you said dairy?
Yes. If it has a mama. Now, we used to could say if it had a mama, and it was accurate, but it's not anymore. We learned it's not accurate anymore. You said if it don't have a mama, it don't have cholesterol, but that's not true anymore. We've learned more. Y'all know what I mean by if it has a mama. So you eat you a mater sandwich. Does the bread have a mama? It might have some milk in it. But let's say if it doesn't. So if the bread doesn't have a mama in it, does it have cholesterol in it? Yeah, we'll come back to bread. How about the mayonnaise? And it's not Vegenaise, it's Kraft. Does it have a mama?
Yes.
The chicken. Okay, let's say if it's a mater. Does a mater have a mama? No. The lettuce? No. Oh, if they've genetically changed it, yeah. How about the cheese? That's Elsie. Let's say now y'all don't, but let's say you got some bacon on there. Has that got cholesterol? Does it have a mama? Yes, Miss Piggy. So that's how you know if there's any cholesterol in it. But unfortunately, I found out at Cornell. No, I'm wrong. It wasn't at Cornell. It was it? I don't remember. Right now, I don't remember which the source was. No, it wasn't Cornell. It was Dr. He wrote the book Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. Y'all ever read that book? He's a cardiologist. His name will come to me. He found that the American wheat, it doesn't have cholesterol. But the super hybridized wheat that we have in America, Dr. William Davis, he's a cardiologist. He's been studying the effects of wheat on the human body since 1990. So we're now into 31 years. Davis found that as a cardiologist, that the American wheat raises LDL. So though it doesn't have cholesterol, it has an action on the body that raises LDL. And then what about cashews? Are cashews a problem? Well, when we had our patients come in, we noticed that our patients' HDL would drop lower than other centers. Well, I expected some drop because when you have total cholesterol drop, you would expect some HDL drop. But we had more drop than normal. So why? And that just bothered me. That's not good. We don't want a low HDL. And so we looked and looked and looked, and finally we had two physicians, both females, said, one was from the Philippines, and I forgot where the other one was from. And they said, we do a lot of cashews here in the dietary department, more than other centers like ourselves. We teach people how to make cashew cream, cashew gravy, cashew. Cheese. We were doing cashews all the time and teaching our patients how to make cashew dishes. And so I said, okay, let's try it. So we quit doing any cashew products. And guess what happened? HDLs went up. Actually did better than others because we weren't using any cashews. And most lifestyle places were doing some cashews. Everything was fine until about 6 months later. I noticed the HDLs were dropping down again. Watched it for a little while, a couple months, and we were significantly dropping. So I went back to dietary and I said, are y'all doing cashews again? And it was like the hand was in the cookie jar. How did you know? The labs told me. But it's so much better. They like the cashews and this and this and this. And I said, the almonds do good. No, they're not as good. But If we can't manage it in moderation, then we just need to totally discontinue. So we totally discontinued the use of cashews because we couldn't do it in moderation. So yes, cashews in moderation don't seem to have a huge impact on HDL drop. But if you're doing a lot of cashews, like all week long, you know, because what we were doing is every day we were teaching them how to make new stuff with cashews, putting it in the food, and they were eating cashews, you know, sometimes twice a day in their food. So just be cautious on cashews for total cholesterol. People come and say, well, what about red yeast rice? Well, red yeast rice is still a statin. It's a plant statin, so you need to be careful for CoQ10 because you still need to add CoQ10 if you even use a plant statin. What about cholesterol pro, which has a fruit in it? Well, that's good. Yes, it raises HDL, it'll lower cholesterol. But I'd rather get to root cause. Let's go to the diet first. Get rid of the cholesterol first. And then if you can't totally get down, I've got a lady right now, her cholesterol runs 300. She's been total plant-based for years, no wheat, no cashews. Red yeast rice didn't work. We're trying the cholesterol pro. Just her body's still, oh, no, she even tried the cholesterol pro. We're trying activated charcoal now. We're trying 2 tablespoons of activated charcoal 3 times a day, monitoring for constipation. And I've seen that to bring down cholesterol before also. Yes?
What about all those non-dairy cheeses that they sell?
Okay, if they're a non-dairy cheese and they don't have any dairy in it, then it's not going to have cholesterol. Yes.
Yeah, but they put some.
But look at the other ingredients. You know, just monitor. So that's on. Any other questions on cholesterol? Okay, blood pressure. The number one cause of hypertension, well, let me back up. It's very easy to mask and manage on the lifestyle side, as we said earlier. And folks are wanting to know, okay, do I need to take hawthorn berry? Do I need to take this? And there's a lot of things that can help. But let's get to root cause. What is causing the hypertension? Remove the cause, and you may not need hawthorn berry. You may not need hibiscus. The hibiscus in Africa, they drink it daily. I mean, it's growing everywhere, and they're drinking it, the hibiscus tea all the time. So the number one cause of hypertension is stress. Stress raises potassium, lowers potassium, raises cortisol. You're going into fight or flight. And so stress will raise blood pressure. You have people who are stressed all day long. You have people who are stressed all night long because they're dreaming all kinds of crazy nightmares. You think that's going to still raise blood pressure? Absolutely. If you're having nightmares, it's going to raise cortisol. So look at the stress. We can't plumb get rid of stress, but we can try to manage it.
Will a lot of stress take away your strength?
Pardon?
Will a lot of stress take
Stress
away
can
your strength?
take away strength. Absolutely.
Almost no strength at all, like after the flu.
Yeah. Is there a spare piece of paper I can look at?
Sure.
Oh, here we go. Great. Great. Thank you. So yes, for stress, you can use B complex. You can use lithium orotate. You can use magnesium. Exercise. The biggest thing is look at, are you following those laws? Dehydration affects stress. Bad nutrition causes stress. Not getting your sleep causes, make sure you're following those 8 laws of health. That's a given on all of this that we're speaking of this weekend. But what's the extra things? Yes, the B complex 100. Yes, each meal. The lithium orotate 5 milligrams each meal. The magnesium to bowel tolerance. Those are all good. If a person has a lot of anxiety, you can take lavender essential oil and vetiver essential oil and put it here, rub it, and breathe it, and it calms a person right down. Lavender and vetiver, V-E-T-I-V-E-R, I think. And boy, it'll calm a person down sometimes within 2 minutes. It's amazing how well it calms down. But let's go back to root cause as much as possible. So what you do is you take a Can I borrow your pen just a moment? There we go. Thank you. So what you do is you take a piece of paper and you write down all of your stressors. And then you're going to do a T-bar. Remember T-bars? Where you take it and you say, okay, this versus this. And so you're going to take a piece of paper, put a T on there, and on one side you're going to put controllables. And on the other side you're going to put non-controllables. And you're going to write down all your stressors that you can control. Are there stressors that you cannot control? Let's go to accounting. Is there some accounting costs that we cannot control? Could be land tax. Could be employer portion of taxes and payroll taxes. It could be utilities. There's yes, we can control up to how much utilities we use to make a widget, but we still have to have X amount of utilities to make a widget. You know what I'm talking about. So you can control some things, but some things you can't control. Well, let's look at our stressors. Are there things that there's never thing you can do about? I've got a lady that comes to see me. She has a son that, however it happened, he shot a state trooper. He's in prison. She says there's a good chance she'll never see him again. She says she'll never be able to hug him again. Yes, she prays for him. Yes, she sends him letters and sends things to him. It was driving her nuts. It'd drive me nuts. Would it not you? To never see your child again, the possibilities of that here on this earth? Never be able to hold them and hug them? I can't imagine it. So it was driving her nuts, and I said, I want you to do this. And so she writes down the stressors that she could control, and the ones that she could not control, like seeing her son again, she put over here. I said, now what I want you to do is I want you to take that piece of paper. I want you to tear that piece of paper in half. Now, on the non-controllables, what I want you to do is I want you to go and sit down with God and talk to God and have a real good, strong conversation and say, listen, there's not a thing I can do with these. I totally trust you. Will you take these? And you give those to God. Now, you just have these controllable ones. And you say, okay, God, help me with these and take my hand and let's take care of these. Do you see what happens there? Now, I promise you, Satan's going to come and dangle this one back up in her face and go, your son's in prison. You're never going to see him again. You're never going to hug him again. Your son's in prison. Is he going to do that? Yes, he is. And I said, here's what you do. You say, Satan, that is not mine. And in Jesus' name, get thee behind me. You go talk to God. Now go and get out of here. It's not yours anymore. And Satan dangles it. Say, get out of here. It's not mine. Go talk to God. He took it. He's got that one.
Like he did with Moses.
Yeah. Do you see that concept? Does that make sense? That can be huge in dealing with stressors. There's financial issues that you are bound to that it's kind of out of control. You're just going to have to trust God to help you through that financial situation. There are medical problems that you have that you do whatever you can, but God's going to have to help you with those health stressors. There's not a thing you can do. There's some diseases that, for whatever reason, God has not chosen to heal you. And so you're going to say, okay, God, that one's yours. You're going to have to help me here. Now, if there's something else I can do, show me. But right now, that one's yours. Help me get through this. So that is very huge, I believe, in helping with stress. So number one cause of hypertension is stress. Pulling that stress down is huge. Getting it under control and managing that. Number two is dehydration. When you're dehydrated, it affects brain function. The brain, as we talked about this morning, needs hydration for it to work properly. You're more prone to stress if the brain does not work well. So hydration is important. We talked about how much water we need to drink earlier today. The next, hydration, it is through the kidneys that regulate blood pressure. If you don't drink enough water, the kidneys don't work as well. And so you got to have plenty of water for the kidneys to work well. The blood is thicker and stickier when you're dehydrated, so you're more prone to hypertension because the pump has to pump harder. It is through urination that you get rid of sodium. And so when you're dehydrated, you're more prone to have more sodium. And that affects your blood pressure. Also, the electrical system in the body. Both the conductivity and the sodium affect the electrical system. The higher the energy, it's really interesting. Do we have electricity in our body? Yes. We do. It's really cool. This is really amazing. And so we can actually control that. There's actual tests that you can test that amount of conductivity is what it's called, conductivity in the system. And you can adjust that by hydration, by mineralization, and things to bring that into the right current. And the professor taught us, he said, it's kind of like a blow dryer. If you hook it to the car, it's not going to run to the car battery. But if you plug it in over here, it's going to run right. If you plug it into 220, it's going to burn it up. It's too much current. Well, that conductivity in the body that's there, hydration affects that amount of current. And that amount of current, the higher the current, the more prone do you have hypertension and many other cardiovascular problems. Number 1 was what? Stress. Number 2 was what? Dehydration. Number 3 is being outside ideal body weight. There's a lot of research in medical science showing that if we're outside of ideal body weight, it increases your risk of hypertension. Do the Duke diet, do the juicing, whatever. Bring that ideal body weight back into ideal body weight. Significantly helps with hypertension. Kidney function is a huge one, and there's more and more kidney issues out there today. Kidneys are the switches, so if you have renal problems, you want to address those renal problems. And we talked about that earlier, the Duke diet, the corn silk, the dandelion, coenzyme Q10, a little activated charcoal. All those are amazing in reversing renal failure. Another one is sodium consumption. Do you eat a lot of salt? Is there some salts that are worse than other salts? Yes. Your Himalayan salt is probably one of your better ones, the pink salt. I didn't like hearing it. Mary Lou didn't like hearing it. But our favorite salt was the Celtic salt. But we found that Celtic sea salt is 7 times more harmful to us than the Himalayan salt or the pink salt. It's just the sodium content. So that's she likes cooking with or seasoning with the Celtic salt. So she's having to learn more so on the pink salt.
Salt cause calcium problems.
I don't know that answer. I don't know. But if you want to address
Even in soy sauce, a lot of salt.
yeah, you got to watch that one. If you want to lower your calcification, one of the best things to lower calcification is K2. K2 is very good, and it actually have now found that it actually can help decalcify the valves in the heart, and so in vessels. So K2 is very, very good. It's a vitamin, K2. Pardon? The calcification.
Doesn't vitamin K actually help clot the blood?
The K1.
Because, I mean, if you're having a heart problem, you don't want your blood clot.
Is K2. The other are the vessels clogged? Are the vessels clogged? And if the vessel is clogged, the hole is more narrow, and that increases pressure. And the other one is if the vessel is hardened, then it doesn't stretch like it's supposed to. And then the other is their heart issues. And yeah, that's where the hawthorn berry can be beneficial. But yes, hawthorn berry can actually help with high blood pressure, or it can help with low blood pressure. Yes?
The K2 is best if taken with vitamin D.
Yes.
D3.
Yes. The problem I'm seeing with that, though, is that people are taking K2 and D together, D3, And that's good. That's very good. But let's say they say, I need more vitamin D. And so that is with, say it's 100 IUs of vitamin D3, and it's, say 100, 200 of K2. And now they decide they want to jump up to 5,000 D3. Now you've got too much K2. And so it's better to take them separate so you can go up and down with your D as needed, but still take that K2, as you said. It's very important to take along with that
When
D.
you say separate, mean two different pills?
Two different
Or
pills.
together?
Yes, because there's
Take them
times,
two different times, or?
take them together. It's just what happens is if you want to beef up your D, because you got your labs and your vitamin D's gone down, you say, well, I need to increase my D. If you take too much of that D3, which also has K2 with it, you could take too much K2, and that can be a problem. Okay, anything else? Exercise is very important for blood pressure. Going back, to that Duke program where we're doing that.
When do you take pill as a whole, and when do you break it up before you take it? Is there a problem with some pills going in your stomach get caught in the lining?
There is a problem, though. Yes, there is a problem of some pills you can.
Just state that in case they didn't hear.
The question was, is there some pills you can break up and some pills you can't? Absolutely. Your enteric coated you don't crush or cut. Also, your time release you don't crush or cut, because that can be problems. So the other one was, and this has been many years ago. Remember the contact pill that you could open up, and it was back. I think it was around '86 they quit doing that one. That one it was dangerous to open that one up, but they got rid of that one. But the ones that we have today, be cautious, even if it's on the supplement side, but especially on the pharmaceutical side, do not crush or cut a time released or enteric coated. Enteric coated is where it's coated, so it dissolves not in the stomach, but it dissolves down in the small intestine and down lower.
Slick and shiny.
Yeah, a lot of times it is. Yeah. Any questions on blood pressure? Yes.
There's been sort of an emphasis I've noticed on sulfur foods, as, to focus back on sulfur containing foods that, as far as the lining of the vessels, that, it helps make it slicker so that cholesterol doesn't hang on to the,
Right.
and also into the areas that have lesions, it helps repair those areas. I don't know if you.
I don't have any information on that.
We had a gentleman over here from Hendersonville, Dr. Fletcher's,
Oh, yeah.
Loma Linda.
Well, if Fletcher said it, he knows what he's talking about.
He was really, talked heavily about B6 and so forth
Yes.
to keep the lining of your vessels.
Yes. I'll have to look at that. Yeah, Fletcher's a very... so he talked to y'all? Fletcher's talked to y'all here?
At McDonald's.
At McDonald's. Yeah, he's great. Great guy. Yeah.
When you say the Duke program for blood pressure, do you recommend using that until they get to a certain
Okay,
weight
thank you.
again, or-
Yes.
or how would
And
you change it?
so let me go back. And you saying that, I made a terrible mistake forgetting something. Let's go back to diabetes. The person has diabetes. And as they're going through the Duke program, their blood sugar is going to start coming down because they're doing norm. The med's going to push it down. See, diabetes is not low blood sugar. Diabetes is high blood sugar. You have low blood sugar because you took more meds than the food that you ate, or you didn't eat enough food for the meds that you took. However you want to think that. But anyway, it's the same thing. I have a friend. I was down in Alabama talking like this. It was on a Sunday. Get a phone call. And he ran off the side of the mountain in a side-by-side. And he got up that morning, took his insulin, didn't have time to eat breakfast. He was busy. Kept on through the day, didn't take time to eat dinner, kept on going. He was driving back to his place and on his side-by-side, and he drove off the side of the mountain. He bottomed out because he had taken the meds, but he hadn't eaten for the amount of meds. When a person, let's say in the 3-day fast, you may have to cut back on those meds during that 3-day fast. Good chance even on the insulin. And as it comes down, it'll come back up when you start eating again. But if you know how to do slide and scale, that works very well. If you don't know how, and your blood sugar's coming down, monitor it every day. And if it's coming down and it's starting to get kind of low, call your doc and say, Doc, I'm doing Duke's program and this is what my blood sugar's doing. What do I need to do? And they'll tell you how to adjust your meds. Same thing on blood pressure. If your blood pressure's coming down, we had a lady who did this program, and she went to her doc and it was coming down, and he said, you're going to be on blood pressure meds the rest of your life. And she stayed on them. She believed him. Well, she found herself in the hospital. She was at Walmart, bottomed out, passed out. Next thing she knows, she's at the ER. And the doc's going, has anything happened lately or different? And find, she's on blood pressure medicines and what all. And she said her blood pressure was really low. And she says, yes, I've started eating well. I've lost this amount of weight. I'm eating this kind of food now. And he says, ma'am, you don't need your blood pressure medicine. Look, what's your blood pressure running? She told him, you don't need it anymore. And she says, my doc said I had to take it the rest of my life. He says, no, stop. So as your blood pressure comes down, then, so the question is, how long do you stay on the Duke diet for hypertension? You stay on it until you have a normal blood pressure without any meds. And then good be go ahead and stay on it until you're an ideal body weight. But for the blood pressure standpoint, until you have a normal blood pressure and you're not on meds, until you've been able to wean them off with your doctor or whatever. Okay.
Somebody asked a question about garlic or hypertension.
Garlic, very good. Garlic's very good for hypertension. Yes. Yes, garlic, whether you take just plain old garlic or you're taking Allicin, yes, garlic is excellent to help lower. I have people who take Allicin just to keep their blood sugar or even their blood pressure or their cholesterol low. Garlic will also lower cholesterol. Okay, if you're eating just regular old garlic, we encouraged our patients to take 4 cloves each meal. And what you can do is steam it about 1 or 2 minutes, but not any more than 2 minutes. And that takes that bite off, and that works very well. Yes, ma'am.
How much K2 should you take and how much is too much?
The research on K2, a lot of K2 out there, you'll see 100, 200. The research done on K2 was 200 and some milligrams. I think it's K2's milligrams, isn't it? I think it's milligrams. Is it micrograms? I don't remember. 200. But it's 200 and something. It's where you can maybe flirt with 300, but it's recommended to stay around the 200. And again, I don't remember right off if it's micrograms or milligrams. But 200 is a good one. Yes, sir.
You said something a while ago about plaques sticking to your vessels. A lot of people, when they go to the doctor every year, do a wellness check. The doctor said, let's check your blood and see how your cholesterol's doing. They know, but they don't want to do another test because it costs more. Homocysteine test. And a homocysteine test will tell you how rough the inside of your blood vessels are on a scale. You should be like 9 or less. But if you're getting up higher, then you have a much higher level of plaque sticking. And everybody's wondering, I wonder if I'm got plaque sticking. Well, that one test will tell you where you're at as a preventive measure.
Thank you for bringing that up because I totally 100% agree with you. I believe that because of statins and the revenue generation of statins is why we look at cholesterol. I believe more importantly, we should be looking at inflammation. And homocysteine and C-reactive protein, CRP, is where you should be looking. Yeah, so you can get a CRP, C-reactive protein, you can get a homocysteine test, and that to me is much more accurate than just looking at the cholesterol. I like still looking at lipids, but let's look at the inflammation.
And the homocysteine test will tell you if you're getting deficient on folate and B complex.
Yes, and then you said 9, and if you stay around 5, 3 to 5 is good, especially in that range. You're right. You don't want to be over the 9. On the CRP, depending on what lab you look at, there's a lot of folks say you don't want over 2. Some labs say over 4. Some say over 6, kind of like TSH. Some say 3, some say 4, some say 5, some say 6. but is your range. But yes, that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that out. Yes.
We're talking proper weight. Most weight was originally based off the military when the guys were 18 to 20. What is a reasonable, if you look around you, most people do either have gray hair or no hair. All right? So you're not 18 anymore. What's the best chart?
Best chart that I like is the percent body fat. Percent body fat is a lot more accurate. BMI is what the medical community has used in their research for years. There's a guy who used to come to me. He was a preacher. He had a PhD. He was the best in the world in breaking blocks. He was, what do you call it, karate, kung fu, whatever. And he would break the Guinness Book of World Records every year on what he broke with his hands. And this man was like a bull. I mean, he was big, he was strong, and he was way off the BMI chart. I checked it. I asked him one day when he came in to see me, I said, "What's your height?" I looked on the chart. He was off the chart, over, significantly obese, because he was just muscle. He was just a very muscular man. Pinch him, I doubt there's hardly any fat on this fella. And so, if a person, BMI is a nice tool to kind of get an idea for. It's easy, height, weight, boom, you know, because you got your percent body fat. I mean your numbers, your BMI numbers. Percent body fat, I believe, is a lot more accurate based on the volume of bone, the volume of muscle, and that's a lot more accurate.
Where do you find that?
You can go to a gym, and the gyms will have a device. The best way to check percent body fat used to be is immersion. Yes. And then we next, what we mostly did was the calipers. But we don't do that anymore. I don't know if it's because you ain't supposed to touch people or something. But we don't do that anymore. And so now they have these scales that you can stand on that sends electric current up and measure it. They have these, Omron is one company. You can hold on to this device by hand, and it will run that current through you, and that will tell you what your percent body fat is. But a nice gym will have a good quality, accurate, more accurate one. And just go to a gym, and they should have the machine to show percent body fat. And there's a chart there that shows you what normal is, what fit is, and then the others, athlete.
So are you trying to get into normal or fit?
Fit. I don't want to be normal. You know what I mean? I don't want to be the average heart attack with a cardiac risk ratio of 5.
You're saying for blood pressure and all these diseases, it's better if you're fit. That's what your goal is.
If you're what?
If you're in the
Fit.
fit range.
Correct. If you're fit. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
What happens if you're hypoglycemic?
Hypoglycemic?
Yeah.
One of the reasons on hypoglycemia, the first thing to look at is there dehydration going on. Dehydration can cause hypoglycemia.
What if I'm constantly drinking water and I'm constantly
Then it's not.
thirsty?
Then it's.
But then my blood sugar is really low.
Yeah.
And if I don't eat, I faint. So,
Yes. So, again, it's not a cookie cutter.
okay.
Everybody's different. And so we say, okay, we rank order and say most people is this. Let's try that. If it's not, then okay, now let's go look at this one. That's where the genema may help you. It's where the chromium picolinate and the trichromium may help you. Used by now, NOW is the brand name, trichromium. And that may help you there. The genema silvestri may help you. That helps to stabilize the blood sugar. I also know that some people with hypoglycemia, some of the foods will drive it. There's some people who have hypoglycemia that if they eat like potatoes, it can cause it to drop. So you look at some of the food issues that could make it drop. Any others on the... On triglycerides. Okay, good. That's the next one I was going to. So triglycerides, first thing I look at on triglycerides is stress. Stress will raise triglycerides. Number 2, I look at sugar. Sugar consumption will raise triglycerides. there's a lot of high fructose corn syrup out there. It's in bread. It's in soft drinks. It's in pickles. It's in a lot of stuff. And that sugar will raise triglycerides. Another thing that will raise triglycerides is oil. Oil. My dad would have had a hard time me saying oil. I would have gotten corrected big time on that. I had a family come through. We were doing a lifestyle program from Colombia. Little girl, 14 years of age. Her triglycerides are extremely high. I don't remember what they are now. It's been probably 17 years. It has 17 years ago. But I don't remember what. I know they're extremely high. So I asked the mom, does she have stress? No, homeschool girl, single child, only child, and no stress. Okay. Does she eat sugar? No, Mom says I don't allow them to eat sugar. Well, I knew that they were whole food plant-based. They didn't eat any meat or dairy or any of that. I said, what about oil? And her mama goes, that's it. I said, what? She says, oil. I said, what happened? She says, you know how some fellas, some men, husbands, you fix the food and then they're not happy with it and still put more salt on it? She says she pours more oil on stuff, everything on her plate. She pours oil. And I said, okay, in this program we don't do oil. And so there's no oil. And I think that year we only did a 5-week program. We drew labs at the beginning, we drew labs at the end. And I'm pretty sure it was a 5-week program. And at the end of the program, we drew labs again, and her triglycerides were normal. And she did olive oil. So be careful in moderation, those oils. So stress, sugar, oil, and meat. Those are the big 3 that I see.
The meat?
Meat, yeah. Yes, it is true that Cholesterol Pro also helps to lower triglycerides, but try to get to root cause. Yes?
Do you use olive oil sparingly?
Very sparingly, yes. Just, yeah. You want to use it. You want to use it just carefully if you're going to use it. But if you're in the restoring process, if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to reverse diabetes, if you're trying to reverse kidney failure, if you're trying to reverse heart failure or heart issues, don't use any oil at all until you're into the maintenance program. And even in the maintenance program, there's people like Esselstyn. Y'all know Esselstyn. Esselstyn's not going to be using oil. Pritikin's not going to be using oil. Ornish isn't going to be using oil. So I don't know I'm there, but definitely in very little moderation. Pardon?
We need some fatty acids for electrical conductivity of the heart.
The avocados and olives. Yep, avocados and olives are a great source, and they'll do the job. Yes, good. Thank you for bringing that up.
In its natural state, not squeezed into an oil.
Yeah, right. Just in the avocado. She said not avocado oil and not olive oil, but just in their natural state. Yeah. Yes.
For those of us that have really been living healthy most of our lives, we haven't needed a doctor, and we haven't needed the natural that you've been talking about all day today. Is there any book that you would recommend that those of us, this is a foreign language to us, to know how much to take and when to take it? Do you have anything at your store that you would recommend that we might?
For lifestyle?
Yes. Kind of cover the things you've been covering today.
Again,
in this session.
the best lifestyle books that I know of is Mind, Character, and Personality, the Counsels on Diet and Foods. Yes, Mrs. White's books. Those are the best ones. They really are. I mean,
So
that's.
they read that book and then come to you and kind of work
And
it
then
out
you
to
can
where-
go to Counsels on Diet and Foods, and what does it say about diet? Go to Ministry of Healing, and what does it say about those general laws?
The one that's talking about Alzheimer's now. He said when he was a teenager, he read that, and that's what got him started on what he's doing now.
That will give you the foundation, and then try out Kellogg. Kellogg has some great information on what was it? Something of a breakfast. What was it? The itinerary of a breakfast. Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. Kellogg has some great health issues. Then go to Thrash. Thrash has just enormous amounts of literature.
Yeah, you're right. For Alzheimer's, they're finding out that parsley, celery, cilantro, chamomile tea have a chemical, again, apigenin, not only anti-cancer, but anti-inflammatory enzyme for brain. Also, the latest, didn't delve into it, but cysteine, nicotinamide riboside, and then NAC, N-acetylcysteine, are supposedly good. It's also anti-aging. But, there's things out there.
The problem is we're losing NAC. The FDA is now trying to pull that from the supplement companies. And so my suppliers who I get NAC, I have some suppliers that have totally discontinued it.
That's because they're finding out that it reverses aging. Some of the scientists have done to where they've taken a woman on menopause and they use some of the nutritional factors, 3 of them, to reset the genetics, to reprogram the genetics to anti-aging, which is really anti-cancer.
I swallowed wrong, excuse me.
On NAC,
Mhm.
on life extension, would they still carry it, you think?
We don't have them, okay.
What is NAC? I've never heard of it.
Pardon?
I've checked a lot of places that I used to, you can still get it on Walgreens online.
Okay.
I just ordered it for
But it's hard to find.
Yeah, we still have a couple companies that still have it, but they've told me they're going to be discontinuing it because the FDA has decided it is now, they want to classify it as a drug. And you can buy a bottle for, say, $25, $30 at your health food store. That same bottle as a script at CVS across the street from us is $300 and some. And what they told my suppliers was they found it worked very well for COVID, and
Making.
they're pulling it out and pulling it back over to the other side.
What is NAC?
Pardon?
Are there any precursor foods or amino acids that would,
Take the place of?
yes, or stimulate the production of the body?
There's a company called Buried Treasure, which is in Pikeville, and they pulled one of their products, which was Allergies, thank you, and it just came back out, and they were looking for something to replace it. I'll look and see what they replaced it with. Yeah. Okay. Anything else on cardiac? NAC?
Whatever you said.
I don't remember the full name. Y'all, NAC, NAC, N-A, NAC.
But what does it do?
What?
I don't know anything about it.
It builds the immune system.
Okay.
Is one of the things it does. That's why we used it in the COVID.
Doesn't it help with the lungs?
It could, I don't know. I can't answer that one. It may help with the lungs.
That's one thing that Neil Nedley.
Yes, Nedley did recommend it. Yes. Pardon? Mhm. Yes, ma'am. Pardon? The NAC? I'd look at getting rid of those causes, the stress, the hydration, dehydration, and the ideal body weight, and the kidney function, and the clogged arteries, and hardening of the arteries, atherosclerosis, arteriosclerosis. If you want to use something that is going to be a good, just a herb to help with blood pressure, manage it, and that's all you're after, the hawthorn's the best I found. It does both ways. Works well. Anything else on heart? Yes.
friend that she has anxiety attacks, and her heart rate will go way up, and she has PVCs and stuff. Anything can calm that down, stop it.
The anxiety issue, the best thing we found for the anxiety, again, those laws of health are so important to help with anxiety. Again, going back, the B complex has been very good. The lithium orotate is excellent for anxiety. The magnesium is great for anxiety, and the lavender and the vetiver work great for anxiety. But I like to go back still to those 8 laws of health. Are they getting their sleep? Are they getting their 8 hours? Are they getting their 9 hours? The 9 o'clock sleep? Are they getting the stages of sleep? Are they getting the hydration where they're drinking the water accurately? Are they getting the nutrition? A lot of times brain issues are they just don't get enough nutrition. They're eating the processed foods. And so I try to not just supplement, but I want to get, are they following those laws of health that can affect that? But those are the items that I found that have been very beneficial. Another one is as that person starts that anxiety climb, the cortisol is going up, exercise really helps to bring it back down. Just like in bipolar, or where you start climbing and the exercise is going to pull it back down. Trace minerals are another great item that I found with anxiety. Again, that trace minerals is helping, as we talked about earlier, where that then makes the vitamins work and the fats, proteins, and carbs work. Okay. Anything else on cardiac? PPQ, yes.
Saffron works like PPQ.
Does it?
Life extension and some of the fine, medical things. When I go through a lot of different materials, I'll check the medical citations from PubMed or other deals. And so PPQ and saffron are both de novo degenerating.
Okay. That's interesting. I just wish saffron wasn't as expensive as it is.
Well, I'm thinking of cloning it.
Okay, because it's crazy expensive by weight.
No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
If I can get a hold of some, I'm praying about it. If I can get a hold of the mahogany tree, I want to clone that because it's anti-Ebola. And I want to clone the saffron because it's a powerful anti-cancer. And also, it's a lot of other things too.
Pardon? I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Yeah. For congestive heart failure. Okay, so what would you do for congestive heart failure? Okay. The Duke diet is very, very good for congestive heart failure. Hawthorn berry is very good for congestive heart failure. Coenzyme Q10, L-arginine, L-carnitine. Magnesium is very, very good to bowel tolerance. Vitamin C. Okay. Shashandra berry, okay, and saffron.
Good for the cardiovascular, probably helps the mitochondria. And your saffron, again, the mitochondria, 300-fold increase of oxygenation that'll lower the problems with the heart.
Okay. Yeah. Saffron has some great properties. It really does.
I got excited when I see that because Dr. Rivas or Scott Wildman said, I want natural things for cancer, I want natural things. And I looked at him like, I was just a farmer, okay? While I was reading my farm book and it comes up, the Lord's calling you to do this and do that. I'm just a layman.
But God has given it for us. He has, every one of us. The other thing is CHF, a lot of times you see you've got that congestion in the lungs. And so the best thing for that congestion in the lungs or the edema in the legs is dandelion leaf. Now, dandelion root is better for the liver and the kidneys when addressing liver and kidneys, but the leaf is better for dealing with lung congestion and for edema in the legs.
What about mullen?
Pardon?
Mullen.
Mullen's phenomenal. Mullen's a great, it's the best herb for the lungs. Mullen is, yes? Okay, yes. Mary Lou brought up another item that we found very beneficial that cardiologists use in Japan and Korea, and that is far infrared for congestive heart failure. Far, F-A-R, infrared. It's an infrared light, and you have near infrared, mid-infrared, and far infrared. Far infrared we cannot see. It's outside of a spectrum that we can't see. Bugs see it, but we can't see it. Insects see it.
So what type of bulb would generate
It's not a regular bulb. It's a, it's ceramic. hmm It's far infrared. What it does is it changes the water molecule in the blood cell, and you have better perfusion. Now, you want a far infrared that alternates between number 4 and number 9 on the wavelength, and it alternates back and forth. It provides the therapeutic benefit, and FDA's approved it actually, and it works very well for heart disease. Also, if a person has congestive heart failure, especially if they have a low EF, ejection fraction, and so they're pushing not a lot of blood through. What's the first thing that gets blood once it's starting to leave the heart? The heart. The heart gets the first. The brain gets the next. The oxygenated, that is. And so what happens is, if you have low perfusion or low EF, the far infrared increases the perfusion, and it helps those patients who are in heart failure. And it also increases nitric oxide. And so that's what the cardiologists also use it for.
These are trimethylglycine beats, so
Yes.
the arginine and citrulline also increase the oxygen in the body.
Mm-hmm.
Cardiovascular.
Yes.
Along with the bowel movement.
Exactly. That's true. You're exactly right. So what you do is you get in the sauna, and you want it at least 20 minutes twice a day, but you can stay in it longer. Now, if you do it longer, it's better for the heart, but you don't want the heart to get hot. It's a sauna. And so you zip it open. If you're starting to get hot, you zip it open, let heat out, but you're still getting the far infrared benefit. It's bouncing off of that inside it's a material there. And then when you cool down, you zip it back up. And you're constantly zipping down and zipping up based on body temperature. But you can stay in there for an hour, 2 hours. It's perfectly fine, just not getting too hot. And it does increase heart function and congestive heart failure. Another thing that's very good for heart failure is pomegranate. Pomegranate is very good for heart failure. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes new stem cells. Pomegranate and taurine amino acids create new stem cells. I use that to regenerate what little brain cells I got left. But that's, to buy the food. It's at the bottom of the high priest gallon.
It is.
The flower of the pomegranate was there in the bell,
Mm-hmm.
and then the pomegranate itself is surrounding out.
That's right.
The sanctuary can teach us much.
They can. Anything else on cardio? Yes.
At a certain age, 65, it changes when you have heart problems. I have AFib, and they wanted me on Eliquis, so I did. And it's to prevent a stroke. Now I'm on Cayenne, but it makes me nervous. My stress level goes up, so that puts me in that take care of the stress. And by asking you this question, that will reduce my stress. Is that a good thing, and how much do you take of Cayenne?
If you're wanting to look at an anticoagulant, the best thing I have found, and again, Dr. Thrash taught me, and that is nattokinase. Or nattokinase or nattokinase. And nattokinase is excellent for as a blood thinner. Another one is Concord grape juice, 6 ounces to 8 ounces. Dr. Phil Collins uses 6 ounces as a blood thinner. Dr. Thrash used the nattokinase, garlic. She was big on using also the garlic, but her big one that she liked was the nattokinase. Hydration, remember, water is the best blood thinner, and so having adequate hydration also helps with that.
The nattokinase, how much?
Now, I believe it's 100 milligrams twice a day is what it is. I'd have to relook, but I believe that's around what it is. Again, for AFib, the Duke diet is also very good for helping to reverse heart disease. Another thing that helps with AFib is hawthornberry. Hawthornberry helps not only the muscle, but it also helps with the electrical.
Is that the
It's the berry. Also, what's been found to help with palpitations is magnesium. That's the first one I'd like to use, is magnesium. And the other one is iodine, 12.5 milligrams of iodine.
How does the iodine work? How do you think it works? The mechanism of action?
Of that, I don't know. I don't know how it works, the mechanism for reducing the palpitations.
And magnesium dose,
Magnesium to bowel tolerance. You want 1,000, 1,200? And congestive heart failure, 1,200? Oh, yes. Thank you, Mary Lou. We were trying to get as much magnesium in Mary Lou as possible. And I remembered talking to a buddy of mine, a physician out in Washington, a number of years ago, probably 16 years ago. And he would use magnesium oil for his patients for cardiac issues, like angina or just heart function. And so if he had a patient having angina, he would have them use magnesium oil, either spray it on or roll it on clavicle over to the side of the ribs, sternum to overside and clavicle down to the base. And it would help significantly in reducing the angina. The best I found for angina immediately is the cayenne pepper. But so he said it's good for heart. He would have his patients use it routinely for heart problems. Mary Lou found she could tell a marked difference between when she used the magnesium oil versus when she didn't on heart function for her, for congestive heart failure. And so what happens is, yes, you can take it PO, and we need to take magnesium PO, just for the immune system, for nerves, a lot of things. But if you want it directly, it gets very quickly transdermally to that muscle. Let's say you have restless leg. Number one cause of restless leg syndrome in America is dehydration. 75% of restless leg syndrome or muscle pain is due to magnesium deficiency. Number two is dehydration. Number three is potassium. And number four is iodine. And we're seeing more and more iodine in our area being an issue up in Northeast Tennessee. The ER doctors are finding iodine deficiencies increasing. And that can also cause the problem with the cramps. And so some people can't handle the magnesium to bowel tolerance. I had a guy who couldn't even handle 400 milligrams of magnesium. And so using the magnesium oil topically on there will help it. $50? Oh, you're right. They did. A physician did have Mary Lou taking 50 milligrams of iodine for her heart failure. Yes. Yeah. That's right. He did have you taking 50 milligrams.
There's something, when you were doing behind the knees, it reminded me, for serotonin, for people who are blind, behind the knees, they take sunlight behind the skin, right behind the knees, and it'll make it a print on.
Really?
Yes.
And it will help us serotonin there?
Yeah, I'm doing some research from clients.
That's good to know.
Sunlight.
Yeah, Clima's great.
Yeah, and I helped one of our patients, one of our people a while with, they were black, they had a vitamin D deficiency, and their kidneys were eating them up alive. And I just happened to be reading Klein.
Yeah.
And Dr. Beaver said, "Do you have anything for me, Perez?" I said, "I'm just reading this, take this, you increase the vitamin D and other things." And
Yeah. A good book for you to read is Sunshine, I believe it is, by Dr. Klein. Excellent book. Anything else on cardiac?
I feel stupid asking this question, but it's been going around my head. If a person wanted to take less blood thinner, would it help they ate less cheese?
If you want to take,
Less blood thinner.
yeah.
Would it help you eat less cheese because it's thickening your blood?
Yeah, it's probably best not to eat cheese to start with.
Well, it's just coming back to a way
Yeah.
to eat less
Yeah.
cheese, not to eat none, but you could.
Right.
It seemed like the cheese, we have somebody in Ooltewah just had a heart attack because the doctor said he was eating so much cheese, it wasn't the blockage in the vessel, it was making the blood so thick he couldn't get through the vessel.
Yeah.
He had a heart attack.
Well, let's look at blockage. That's an area that folks see is blockages with atherosclerosis. What do you do for atherosclerosis? Had a lady come in and she had both carotids at 75% occlusion, And in 2 months, we were down to only 25% occlusion. And what we used was lecithin granules, 1 tablespoon, 2 times a day. Now we're seeing that 3 times a day is okay, so we've gone to 3 times a day, which should be lecithin. How do you spell lecithin? Lecithin? I don't know, lecithin. And you can do a soy lecithin, or you can do a sunflower seed lecithin.
How much, how often?
A tablespoon 3 times a day.
I'd rather have the sunflower because of the genetically modified garlic.
Yeah, if it's a genetically modified, I wouldn't want that, yes. Yes, ma'am.
What would you do for an enlarged aorta or an aorta aneurysm?
Pray. Yeah. You want that tissue to be as healthy as possible. And so the problem is the integrity of the tissue. And so lifestyle is huge. The nutrition that person's getting. I don't know supplementation-wise what to do to increase that tissue, but nutrition, I would think, would be a big part of helping that tissue, because that's a tissue issue. Yeah.
Barberry is excellent. The Mennonites shared with me that barberry and comfrey externally, barberry is excellent with skin and that type of tissue.
So it will increase the tissue.
And also hyaluronic acid and vitamin C will help the collagen production, which then promotes tissue. What they're finding out is that, I think, what we're finding out is that nerve damage of any kind will stop the collagen production.
Mhm.
And that's, you need to do things that help the nerves.
So will that help the aorta tissue?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's
So that's barberry,
yeah, barberry,
vitamin C.
vitamin C, hyaluronic acid.
Okay.
Hyaluronic acid.
Uh-huh.
Resveratrol will help.
Okay.
And then again, you go to taurine and pomegranate. The taurine and pomegranate makes new stem cells,
Okay.
and new stem cells will regenerate.
Yes.
tissue. What I would use is I use bromelain in between meals to remove any scar tissue, and that way the taurine and the pomegranate stem cells can make physical contact, and then they differentiate.
Okay. The other thing that can help stem cell regeneration is raw aloe. Aloe.
Aloe,
Raw aloe will regenerate.
From the plant.
Aloe vera
aloe vera, okay.
will regenerate has stem cell regeneration. Yes. Okay. Anything else on cardiac? Okay. Cancer. Folks want to talk about cancer. Cancer is something that I don't like working with. Cancer, it's a lot easier to deal with diabetes. The consequences of cancer are deadly. And what makes it more difficult is that, and very, very humbling, is that all of this is humbling, y'all. But because it's not us, it's God. If you think you're doing it, you're going to fall and bust your nose, because it is not us. It's God doing it. But you can have what appears to be the exact same cancer, do the exact same protocol, and have 2 different outcomes. We're not in control, y'all. And as we come closer and closer to the end, there are people who will not be part of the 144,000. And God is going to let them to rest towards the end. And they're not going to have to worry about all this crazy stuff that's going on today. That is difficult for us who are still here, because we want to be with that person. But we've got to have a bigger view. We have eternity with that person, potentially. And so I tell people, I can promise you healing from cancer. I can promise you healing, 100% healing. But you have to do 4 things. I've got a buddy of mine. He's a physician. He says, "Walt, you can't do that." I can. God promises it in the Bible. if you do 4 things, you will have healing from cancer. Number 1, accept Jesus as your Savior every day. Not just when you're 5 years old. Had a lady come in one time and she was talking. That's every day. She came in and she said, was talking to her friend, and her son, this is another situation, and her son had just been put in prison for killing somebody. And she's, but okay. She says, and I'm going to say 8 years old because she used 8 years old, but I'll say Johnny. Johnny's okay because he is saved when he was 8 years old. And it's daily, minute by minute. We've got to accept Christ as our Savior. Number 2, we've got to become really good friends with Him. The Bible says He's going to come back and people are going to go, oh, I did this, and oh, I did this, and I did this for you. And He's going, I don't know you. You didn't spend time with me. We've got to spend time with Him. As we walk, as we make decisions, constantly asking Him, okay, what do I do on this situation? Just talk to Him. You don't have to get down on your knees and pray every time. Talk to Him as you're making decisions. Should I do this? Should I do that? And just ask Him, and He will impress you this way, that way, constantly, and He'll move you throughout the daily issues. Now, sometimes you may not want to do what He tells you to do, but listen to Him. You'll know His voice if He's telling you to do something else. Spend time with Him. Number 3, ask for forgiveness. If you've done something wrong, ask for forgiveness of God and who have you done wrong. And number 4, read the Bible. If it says do it, do it. If it says don't do it, don't do it. The Bible promises if you do those 4 things, you will have healing. And now it doesn't say when. It doesn't say if it's going to be 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. It may be when Christ comes on resurrection morning. But I'd rather have resurrection morning, would you not, than to not have healing at all. And then you've got eternity, plumb eternity with your family. Yes, sir.
Number 5,
Yes.
pray.
Absolutely. That's where you're spending time and talking to Him. Talk with Him and talk with Him and talk with Him. Yes. It's so important, isn't it? Prayer. Talk with Him. So that's the first thing when I talk to people with cancer is that's where you need to invest your time. That's where you need. Yes, juicing is good and this is good and that's good. Invest your time in those 4 if you've got cancer. If you can, do those other items, absolutely, that I'm going to share. But invest your time in those 4. Now, what are those 4? Well, probably the best thing I like is juicing. Juicing is amazing. Let me back up before I say that. When people call me and say, I have this cancer, that cancer, whatever, they'll say, what do I need to do? And I'll say, I don't know. Let me send you something. So I've got about 3 pages of different things we found to be very good in boosting the immune system and to fight cancer. So I email it to them. And let me tell you a story. I have a friend that I grew up with in high school and college. And actually went to college here with me. And 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, her sister called me. She was a year behind me. And she said, sister's not doing well. Got cancer real bad. Can you help her? So I'll be glad to call her. So I called her. And she's a physician. And I called her to see how she was doing. What's wrong? So she told me, this was January. She says, around Thanksgiving, I knew something was going on. She's a physician. But I had Thanksgiving to have with the kids. She said, then Christmas, I had Christmas to the kids. And so finally, first of the year, I finally went to get it checked out. And it was breast cancer, significant, liver, significant, and the lymphatic system. And she said, they've told me, and she lives out on the West Coast, and she said that oncology has told me that I will not make it past June. If he does, if they do everything they can do for me, everything. radiation, chemo, whatever. I will not live past June. I said, can I help in any way? She says, well, I have to live. There's some issues going on that I need to help my family with. And so I said, I understand. So I sent her the list. And she called me back. She said, what do I do? I said, I don't know. Pray and ask God. She's a praying person. Pray. Ask God what you need to do. So she called me back and said, this is what I'm impressed I need to do. I said, okay. So I shared with her, and I'll share with you some of the items. And I would check on her. In the middle of June, she had a CT, MRI, and a CT, MRI, and a PET. No cancer. They couldn't see no cancer. That's the middle of June. The last week of June, the surgeon said, I've got to go in and you really need a radical double mastectomy. The type of cancer you have is deadly. It can come back, and it may not even be gone. You've got to have it. And kept pushing her and pushing her and pushing her. You know how folks can push sometimes on medical issues. And she's a physician. She says, okay, go in and look. Go in and look. If you see something, take care of it. If you don't see anything, close them up and leave them alone. So she went back. So she went in. He went in to 3 major areas. Did radical exploratory. All he could find was perfect tissue. She's still alive today. That's how we got to listen to God and what God and what He says. I had a lady call me one time, and this was 21 years ago. This October, 21 years ago this October, and she said, she says, I have a type of cancer that the oncologist at Virginia Beach said has never been cured. Never. I'm nursing my 8th child. She's 45 years of age. And he told her just to go home and finish nursing the child and prepare to die. And she said, I have 8 children to take care of. I've got a husband to take care of. I cannot die. Can I come? I said, come on. And so she came, November and December. And when she went home in December, they could find no cancer. And she's still alive today. Still teaching medical missionary work. So, yeah, case after case, I've seen go that way, and situation after situation, I've seen go the other way. It's God doing it, y'all. It's not us. And all we can do is try to. Our ultimate goal is to point folks to Christ. That is our ultimate goal. And by sharing with things that can boost the immune system, that can try to help, have them pray if that's what they're impressed by God to do, then share with them. So what are some of the things that we do? I like juicing a lot. Juicing works extremely well. Juicing gives copious amounts of nutrition. That's what Gershon used. Dr. M taught me about juicing first. He was out of Florida. Now he's out in Washington State. I mostly use vegetable juice, maybe a little apple, but mostly vegetable juice. Yes?
Does it have to be organic?
No. There's people who can't afford organic. Organic is the best, but there's times that you just don't have it. Reality. And you say, God, can you make up the difference here? Can you fix this problem for me? I don't have the fun. Either I need the funds or take care of this.
Or would you, like with carrots, would you
Yes.
remove the extra layer at the top?
I would if it wasn't organic, then yes, you want to peel it. Yes. Peel it. Yes, ma'am. Another thing, and you can do it, 16 ounces each meal, more aggressive like Gershon, which is 8 ounces every hour on the hour for 12 to 13 hours. Yes, sir.
Gershon said that at the beginning, back in the 30s, he would get a 50% success rate with juicing, and even with stage 4 and cachexia and all that. But he found that the lysing of the tumor was such a, as it's dying, it was so putrid and toxic that they would go into hepatic failure. peristaltic nerve and stimulates the liver. You know, the peristalsis is the muscular movement and action of the intestines, but it all goes back to the liver and the duodenum and gallbladder, etc. And so he was able to come back to his 50%, and then he actually declared that if I can save the liver, I can cure every cancer with juicing and coffee. And he continued in that vein for, you know, his daughter took over. And,
Yeah, Charlotte.
but he was terribly suppressed by allopathic and
Yes.
the FDA.
The other thing he found with the coffee enema, besides that aspect you were just speaking of, and you know, especially the cleansing the liver, but also it was great for pain. I have a friend, he's a physician, and his grandmother was dying, and he went to Gershon, and talked to Charlotte Gershon, and she said, do coffee enemas. And
He found the localized pain was the result of the lactic acid that the cancer cells are producing, which you know, that it's an incomplete combustion of glucose, and the liver tries to convert that. It does convert the lactic acid back into glucose, and it burns a lot of calories just doing that conversion. But the lactic acid, because your whole body tissue, your muscle tissue, and all your metabolism is saturated with lactic acid, which is a good fuel. It makes everything feel tired and exhausted. The cellular respiration cannot occur properly. So, and then it also weakens the good cells, and that they become more vulnerable to turning to cancer.
Parsley, that's why the parsley, celery, cilantro, chamomile tea, that chemical apigenin stops the fluoric acid cycle, which is a non-oxidant cycle, okay? And that helps take care of the lactic acid.
Yeah.
But also the saffron and the shushander berry and the black walnut help increase oxygen. According to the university, I got something from PubMed 25 years ago,
Yeah.
and they say that when you kick into low oxygen state, the cancer cells stop the apoptosis, but if you can oxygenate them, it can
They convert to
redifferentiate them
fermentation.
or cause them to go to apoptosis.
Yes, yeah. Get the oxygen back. So alkalizing and increasing oxygen.
Yeah, but those things will help with the lactic acid.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
do
The
the
liver
other stuff. I'm
conversion.
not saying not to do the other stuff,
Yeah.
but that'll supplement what you do.
Right. Amen.
the other thing we use is herbs. Padiarco is probably one of my favorite. Padiarco, P-A-U, space, D' space, A-R-C-O. Burdock root, chamomile, red clover, but you don't want to use red clover in breast cancer, uterine cancer, and prostate cancer. You want herbs that will build the immune system, purify the blood, and kill the cancer. But you'll find, the majority of the time, herbs that purify the blood kill cancer. Herbs that kill the cancer purify the blood. They go hand in hand.
There's something else to consider. Whenever you're fighting a cancer or disease or viral things, your immune system is putting out a lot of peroxide and other things that are trying to kill that. Your immune system, if you get too much of that, it shuts down your immune system and the disease progresses. So if you fill yourself with antioxidants, foods, nutrition, other things, that lowers the oxidation there, so your immune system kicks it back on, and that can help. So one of the strategies that I've shared with some of the physicians is to load people, for virology also, because the virus is usually inflammatory pathway, is that you give people antioxidants, you load the people up with natural and supplemental antioxidants for a while, and then you give things that cause free radical damage, like, for instance, Artemisia omnia is a powerful, and not only anti-malarial, but anti-cancer, and also antiviral. have a forest system, and they take in iron in, so the artemisin's got the iron, but it also has artemisin that will cause a free radical cascade. So you want to do two things. You pump somebody up with antioxidants, and then you give them things that oxidize, verbal agents that oxidize. Or,
Talking about wormwood?
yes, indeed.
Okay.
Sweet
Yeah.
ant and wormwood.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I?
Yes,
just a
please.
quick comment? Have you heard about the enzyme nagalase?
I have not.
Finding? So cancer cells produce an enzyme. Also pathogens produce the same enzyme. And it goes to a particular electron link in a substance called GC-MAP. Okay, GC-MAP is your macrophage activating factor. So your macrophages just float around like zombies until they're activated. And so this enzyme is produced to protect the cancer cells from your immune system by shutting off the activation of macrophages. Okay, and the activating factor GC-MAP is actually built from vitamin D and a protein. It's basically a vitamin D binding protein that it consists of. Okay? And this has been, there's been doctors looking at this that have actually found, dead under suspicious circumstances. And there's also been some suspicion that they add this nagalase to vaccines to help the inoculant survive your immune system until it can trigger the production of antibodies. So they're actually putting this stuff, and it's a big, secret, but there's a big suspicion of that. So,
Chemical sylvesterol they're finding in the mahogany tree, that's also anti-Ebola, is a powerful deregulator of these types of enzymes. It deals with that.
Yes, ma'am.
Does taking 35% food grade hydrogen peroxide help?
Yes, 35. Thank you. I use the 35% food grade hydrogen peroxide. Thank you, sir. 35% food grade hydrogen peroxide. Every day. We start out with 3 drops, 3 times a day. You can use either, distilled water and on an empty stomach. Increase it by 3 drops each day, 3 times a day. The goal is to get to 50 drops. There are people who go to 100 drops 3 times a day. There are people who go to 150 drops 3 times a day. The recommendation is 50 drops 3 times a day. And you just increase each day by 3 drops, 3 drops, 3 drops.
Do you have any thoughts on the temperature of the water you're drinking?
In a minute. Yes, let me come back to that. And so what it does is you increase that, but after a bit you will you'll start getting a bit nauseous. And so to help with that nauseousness, some people use aloe vera, some people use ginger. But as you get up in that, start higher, it's really challenging. And so they'll put it in the almond milk, and almond milk works really good to put it in.
Why are you taking it?
Oxidation, the oxidation part, oxygen. And so I know folks literally they have used that one tool along with prayer, and I've known more than one person, and God is blessed. But one was in brain cancer, one was in prostate cancer. It's very powerful. The question is the temperature of water. When you're drinking your juices, your waters, whatever, and you're wanting to, and someone's really sick, you want to bring that up to more of a body temperature, because when liquids and food go into the stomach has to bring it to body temperature, so it either has to spend energy cooling it down or warming it up. And so we would warm our juices or our waters, at least definitely not cold water for the temperature of the water. Okay.
Cold water, not
Yeah, cold water. Okay, we got 5 minutes till supper begins. All right. Let me think. Another one. Far infrared works really good. That's used in China for attacking cancer. Vitamin C. Vitamin C is another excellent one for addressing to bowel tolerance. Also, you can use MSM and vitamin C. MSM first, then the vitamin C 30 minutes later. MSM opens up the cell better to let the vitamin C in. Hydrotherapy, you got your far infrared, your fever treatments. Fever treatments will increase the white cell count 7-fold, and it peaks at 5 hours. It doesn't come back to normal until 3 days later.
What kind of fever treatment? Like the Russian sauna?
No, sir, the fever treatment, where they're in a bathtub, just hot water, and the ice. A fever bath, yes, yes. And we drew labs on it and proved that. Loma Linda with Thomas said that it would peak 7-fold, and it does.
What temperature do you want to reach?
Pardon? You want an oral temp of around 102 to 104. Maintain that for, if you can, 30 minutes.
So what cautions, when you're watching for maybe the Herxheimers to set in after a fever bath, or the elevated, the stimulation of the healing crisis?
Yeah.
You want a cool rag to the head to keep,
Somebody's gotta do that with you, you can't do it by yourself.
Yes, you don't do it by yourself, and you do have a cool rag on your head. Also, I found best is when the treatment's over to lean forward, pour the ice water down the back of the neck. They're less, because you got to stand them up, shower them off, send them to bed for 2 hours, and they're less prone to get, because you had vasoconstriction here, vasodilation from here down, and they're a bit woozy going back to the bedroom. And so that helps with that process, and then have them sleep for 2 hours. Yes, if they get tacky on you, tachycardia, and obviously when temperature goes up, the heart rate goes up, but they get real tacky on you, all you do is just put ice on their heart, and that'll bring that tachycardia down. And we use that out on the ambulances. ACIAC is a good tea that we found very good for fighting cancer. There's poultices. We do herbal poultices on the effect. ACIAC tea is a tea out of Canada by the Native Americans.
Renee Casey.
Yes.
That's her name
Backwards, correct.
She had the 4 herbs, and now they have 7, but there's
Right.
2 versions.
Yes, that's
I
it.
can't remember what the herbs were in the 4 herbs.
Burdock, sheep sorrel,
Sheep sorrel,
and
burdock root,
yep, and I don't remember the other 2. What?
red clover maybe,
No, I don't think so. Yes?
ojibwa.
Ojibwa. Okay.
Tribe of Indians.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Other things that we used, rebounding, mini trampoline. A mini trampoline, bouncing on a mini trampoline for 5 minutes will increase the white cell count 3-fold for 1 hour. So we'd have our cancer folks jump on just bounce on a mini trampoline 5 minutes every waking hour, and that will keep that white count on up there. Just a simple health bounce. Yeah, it increases the lymphatic flow 10-fold. Yes, and so it increases the white cell count. Yes. Okay, for COVID. Let's get that, because supper starts at 2 minutes. Let's catch COVID when we come back at 7 something. Does that sound good? Okay, we've run out of time. Yes. Let's close with prayer, y'all. Y'all been patient. Let's have prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, Lord, you've given us a lot to help us. There's a lot of different things you've given us. It's not a cookie cutter. It's person specific. You've given us a lot of tools that are from all over the world in different areas. But Lord, help us to stop and ask you what we need to do. And Lord, bless as you would have fit. We know at times we're like a 5-year-old. We just don't understand why. And it's not until we mature later that we'll understand why you make the decisions that you do, such as cancer. But Lord, again we ask, give us that desire to learn, continue learning. Give us the wisdom of what we need to do. Help us to better understand physiology that we can address issues. And Lord, help us to make that desire to not use this information for self only. Yes, we need to have strong bodies and be mentally alert, but also we need to use that to bring folks to you. and help us understand that is our mission. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.